Have we started?
Do I have to do that? Councillor Roberts, can you hear us?
I can now.
Okay, thank you. We had started, so just a moment. Okay. We are going to do a regroup here and start again. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It is now 9:02 a.m. I'd like to confirm that all members are here and present with the exception of Councillor Nishikawa, which means we do have quorum. Just a reminder to those watching in the audience that we continue to work in a hybrid format. So members of council will be participating today via Zoom as well. I'd like to confirm that our CAO clerk and members of the senior management team and staff are present. I'd like to advise that we did receive a supplementary agenda, which was issued to the following public comments. Point 9B, Steve Elliott, 11A of the Muskoka Lakes Snow Trails Association Memorandum of Understanding, and 9B, Mr. McNair regarding 11B, the fireboat fundraising request. Just a quick note to remind everybody that today's meeting is being live streamed and recorded on the Township of Muskoka Lakes website and YouTube channel. By participating in the open public meeting today, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded and posted online. Before I ask about pecuniary interest, I did want to welcome, we have a new member of staff, and I'd like to welcome Ms. Huff, and perhaps CAO Pink, if you'd like to say a quick comment.
Thank you. Good morning, committee. Yes, I'd like to introduce to committee our newest member of our senior leadership team, Jennifer Huff. She comes to us from Strathroy Caradoc, Southwestern Ontario, was their director of building bylaw and planning there, a very busy, fast-growing municipality. So I'd like to welcome her to the team, to council, and I'm sure she'll do an excellent role, an excellent job in quite a busy role, quite a busy spot in a hot seat. So please join me in welcoming Jennifer to the team. Thank you.
Welcome. At this point, I'd like to ask committee members if you have any disclosures of pecuniary interest. Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to item 4A. And Ms. Lehman, would you like to introduce this?
Thanks. Good morning, Chair Mazan and members of the committee. Before you is the final report from our compensation review, which we embarked upon with the consulting firm Gallagher this past spring. The staff report provides some additional context, background, and costing, and the consultant report provides more specific and technical details about the process. Additional attachments with personal and identifiable information were included in the closed session portal, and the option to go into a closed session for a more in-depth conversation about that data is available to you. The resolution is to approve the compensation adjustment and include it in the draft 2025 budget. And today, to present the consultant report, we have with us Jane Mizanski and Amanda Kim, who work closely with staff on this project. They are on Zoom.
Thank you. Welcome. I think you're on mute, and I'm having a hard time seeing. Ms. Zansky, we can't hear you. If you're able. Oh, I think you're on mute now. Try taking. Now, I think you might be okay. I think we need maybe turn up the volume. We can't hear you. Ms. Mizanski, did you want to try again? Okay, Ms. Mizanski, we're having some technical challenges, it would seem. I don't know if Ms. Kim, if she's able to come in and perhaps do the presentation. Other technical options, I will ask our deputy clerk to walk us through those possible technical options.
Well, it just, oh, okay. I suppose you could try and phone in from a telephone. You could try a different device. You could log in and log out of Zoom on your current device. Any of those strategies have been helpful in the past to others. Can I just ask either Councillor Roberts or Councillor Bosenworth to say something quickly so we can ensure that?
Good morning, everyone.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Is Ms. Kim available? Would she be?
The other option is to move ahead with the next delegation and come back.
Okay. I think that I might take that approach just to allow for some time to allow our delegation to give them some time to figure out how to access. I think I will now move on to the next item and come back to you. And that gives us a little bit of time to figure that piece out. So with that, I think I will move on to items, our invited presentation. And Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Chair Mazan, and good morning, committee. There actually isn't a presentation at this stage in the project. We've just invited our consultant, Ms. Flower, to join us to assist with any questions if they pop up in today's discussion. Committee will recall last fall around this time, we identified our first year objectives for the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And with that, one of the top priorities was the Parks and Trails Standards Manual. In the spring, we awarded the project to Kendall Flower Landscape Architecture. And since then, we've been working together to produce this document. As mentioned previously, we provided an update in July. The document itself will focus on defining and classifying all our parks and trails, identifying design standards, development processes, as well as maintenance guidelines. With that, we have a draft of the manual prepared and ready for review. It is quite lengthy. It's got a lot of information in it. So the intention was to bring it forward to committee, provide members of committee a month to review it, provide staff any feedback, comments, questions, etc. We can definitely help out with that, and then we can return back in a month time at the November General Finance Committee meeting to consider adoption of the manual. With that, Chair, happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you very much. Committee, I do have a resolution, but I think Mr. Moore has walked us through the process that we will be given a full month. It's a pretty lengthy document to process, and so we'll have another opportunity for specific questions, but I am opening it up. Are there any questions for Mr. Moore? Okay, seeing none, I will read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Burry. Be it resolved that the draft Parks and Trails Standards Manual be received for information purposes and that committee provide feedback to the manager of Parks, Recreation and Facilities by October 31st, 2024 in order to facilitate its finalization at committee on November 13th, 2024. So any final comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Moore. Okay, thank you. We are now going to try again on item 5A. So, well, welcome Ms. Zielinski? Mizanski.
Mizanski.
Not working. So.
Okay.
I'm wondering if Ms. Kim, is that an option or? Okay, let's try one more time.
One more time. Am I there
Oh,
now?
yay! Yes.
Oh,
Welcome.
my. Oh, my. And I did have my coffee this morning already. So, my goodness. Apologies
that's
for that.
That is okay. Welcome. Welcome.
Okay, thank you very much, and apologies for disrupting the agenda. So I believe there are some slides that staff have that I'll just kind of get them to put up on the screen and then I can walk through.
Yes, the staff is just doing that right now.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Okay. It's somewhat unnerving when you just click, click, click,
Yes.
and nothing works.
It is, and I assure you, these things happen every month, and staff do their best to help us navigate technical things every single month. So.
That's it. That's it.
Okay.
Virtual is great until it doesn't work. All right.
Exactly. So we're just waiting for that presentation to come on the screen, and then we'll turn the floor right back to you.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much for the time on the agenda, and hopefully I can catch up a little bit here and not take too much more time. So next slide, please. Okay. I believe, as Sarah had indicated, that Gallagher we've been the consultant for the township for a number of years, but we were specifically engaged most recently to conduct the market assessment for the current compensation of the township, both the non-union positions and the unionized positions in the organization. Doing the assessment against a comparator market group that we've identified. And it's really just to ensure that the organization is paying employees fairly. That's internal equity, competitive, speaking to the external equity. And then we also test for pay equity, which I will mention further along in the presentation. So the scope of the review, we had 64 non-union positions and 11 unionized positions. We did focus primarily on a market assessment to make sure that you are competitive to the marketplace so that you're able to staff your positions and retain the employees that you have. Coming out of the market assessment, we use that information to develop a proposed salary structure. Well, you have the structure in place, but to update your job rates as needed to make sure you meet all of the internal equity, pay equity, and external equity. The salary structure changes are for the non-union group only. We did do the market review for the union employee group, but that was just for information for staff for upcoming negotiations. Next slide. So the last market review that we worked with the township was in 2019, and it was really designed to make sure that you were meeting your pay equity obligations with the legislation, and to make sure that you were competitive as well at that point in time. Since 2019, you are maintaining your structure. You are any new jobs that are coming into the organization, or any change jobs, you're having them evaluated, make sure they get into the hierarchy of your organization structure in a fair and equitable way through job evaluation. You also apply annual economic adjustments to each of your salary grid to make sure that you keep in step as best as possible with the economy and with the marketplace. But since 2019, I think we would all agree that there were some unusual things that have happened in that interim period from 2019 onwards. And it has impacted the municipal sector very, very predominantly in terms of recruiting and retaining staff. Right now, it's almost as if 2019 onwards, the silver tsunami, the baby boomer retirement wave has hit the municipal sector with full force. So there's a lot of retirements that are going on right now in the sector. And when I say the sector, I mean, predominantly my marketplace is Ontario, but I also have a number of clients in other provinces, BC and Alberta and so forth, and they're experiencing the exact same thing. So it's really Canada-wide sector that this retirement is going on, and this aggressive competition. What we have is all of these vacancies that are occurring, but then we have the candidate pool where we would normally draw new recruits from is diminishing as well. So the university graduates that we would normally look to in planning, finance, engineering, those types of roles, the private sector is looking a little more lucrative for those individuals to be joining the private sector. So we're losing candidates that way. Another pool of candidates would be coming from the unionized employee group, but we have also just, again, anecdotally noticed that they're less inclined to look towards, promotion positions into the management roles. The protection that they receive through their collective agreement of certain rights and benefits that they have, the difference between salaries is just not enough to keep them fully attracted into those management roles or non-union roles. And then the whole hybrid, as much as it's convenient that I don't have to drive 4 hours to get to the presentation, but the whole hybrid situation that has arisen as a result of the pandemic. We have employees, or not employees, but candidates now that are really driving that requirement, or as a condition of employment, that they can either work from home or work remotely. So you could have candidates living in Cornwall but working for the township of Muskoka. So it is putting some pressure on the organizations as well in that whole recruitment dynamic. Having talked about pay, though, in terms of salary, which was the focus of the review, we do acknowledge that pay is not everything for retaining staff or attracting staff. But what we do want to make mention is that when you are recruiting, you're posting your job description or your job posting, and you do have your salaries posted, and that is the first thing that people look at. They say, well, okay, in the top end, they always look at the top end. They never look at the bottom end of a posting. And so you don't want them to look at the salary and go, well, that's, not quite of interest to me with that salary rate. So you don't want to shut down the conversation or the opportunity to engage someone at the very outset. So it's important to make sure that your salaries are competitive at the very minimum. Next slide. When we do a compensation review, these are the pillars that we tend to keep in mind. Fairness, which is all about internal equity, the felt fair pay, where people are people. They look to the person beside them and go, oh, well, I know how much you make. And, I seem to think I work harder than you work harder, and so forth. So we do fairness or internal equity through job evaluation, which is being maintained by the township. So that pillar has been established already. Compliance speaks primarily to pay equity compliance, which is male jobs versus female jobs, and making sure the salaries are aligned for jobs of similar value in the organization. We always make an assumption, perhaps incorrectly sometimes, but the assumption that you are complying with employment standards. The third pillar is the external equity, which is the competitiveness in the focus of this review. But in terms of the municipal sector or the broader public sector, we have the fourth pillar, which is affordability. So any of the recommendations that we come forward with always have to have that filter of it is a public sector, publicly funded organization. So we have to be mindful of the budget as well, because any of the recommendations as we're doing today have to be approved by council. Okay. So the market review, we had 14 comparators. These were the same comparators that we used in 2019. They still seemed valid. They are very much in your geographic area. They are known competitors. They have similar services. They're experiencing the similar market pressures in terms of competition for the organization and for their jobs. Next slide. So when we do the job matching, we reach out to all of those comparator organizations. We receive their job salary information, and we do the market matching ourselves. So we take a lot of them are our clients as well. So we have pretty good idea as to what the jobs are. So we do the matching of your jobs to theirs. We only include statistics where we have at least 4 observations, because anything less than that is not really a valid statistic in our position. So we identified having, with those 14 comparator organizations, we matched 70% of the non-union positions. So having enough market data gives us a good confidence level that we are getting an accurate picture of what your marketplace is. And we're quite confident in moving forward with those numbers. So looking on aggregate, so some positions are high to market, some are a little low to market, but overall at the P50, we have the statistics where you're basically at P50, P60, you're pretty well within that plus or minus 5% range. So you are reasonably competitive to your target pay policy, which is the 60th percentile. Just for clarity, 60th percentile means that 40 of your observations, or 4 out of 10 observations, are higher, 6 out of 10 observations are lower. So you're picking that point in the rank order of the data. Next slide. So what we do with the market information is we take a look at your current job rates. We take a look at what is required for pay equity compliance to make sure that you do not have a pay gap due to gender. We look at the market competitive rates and then design principles, which really talk about, so we'll identify a salary rate for a band and then another band below. So we'll make sure that there's enough difference between one band and the next band beside it, that there is not compression. Anything less than 5% is very, very tight and does not really provide enough recognition that the job in the higher band has more responsibility and accountability. So you want to make sure that the salary has some differentiation there. And then the last filter, as I had mentioned earlier, is affordability, making sure, we could make it look really pretty and ideal in a compensation sense, but we also have to put the filter of affordability. The pay equity analysis was then completed to make sure that the final proposed job rates that we were recommending did not generate any pay gaps. So we've completed that analysis, and then we move on to implementation. So because we did not change the structure, we still had your same number of pay bands. We still had the same step structure in place. All we really did was update any of the actual salary rates to be competitive to the 60th percentile of your pay policy. So having said that, we just left everyone in their current step. So if you were in step 3 of your current grid, you stayed in step 3 of the proposed grid. We are recommending an effective date of January 2025, which is a go forward date. So even though we did the analysis based on 2024, you will have to, or we're recommending that you do apply an economic adjustment as per your past practice so that you make sure that you are reflecting 2025. Otherwise, you'll kind of say, well, we're effective or we're competitive 1 year lag. So that's why you have to make sure you do the adjustments as well. Next slide. So for the committee's consideration is to adopt the proposed grid that has been included in the report. It is internally equitable and it is competitive to your pay policy. We have some recommendations, which really is what you're doing right now, is to adjust your grids annually, as I had mentioned, for 2025. Continue to evaluate your new and changing jobs. And in fact, Sarah has already just sent me a couple of new jobs or a couple of jobs that needed some review. And then to test for pay equity compliance. If you have a lot of change in the organization, we would say test for compliance annually. If you're pretty status quo, then maybe every couple of years you could check your pay equity compliance. And then again, market reviews every 4 years. It usually aligns with the council term of office. And we're suggesting 4 years. If we lag it out to, 5 or 6 years to do a review, then we might find ourselves in this situation again, where we've had some pretty aggressive and active activity going on within the marketplace. So you don't want to create a gap by delaying your market reviews. So every 4 years is the recommendation. And I think that might be the last slide. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So committee, I do have a resolution, but I am going to ask, are there any questions either for staff or for our delegation? Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you to our presenter, Jane. Thank you for your involvement here. Around the Thanksgiving table, there was a lot of discussion at our house about changing norms, if you will, as you referred to earlier in your presentation regarding pre and post COVID. What I'm hearing is south of here, there's a movement afoot to get people back into offices and things. So I guess I'm almost wondering, is it some sort of an incentive to have a plan, a program here at the township where we simply do allow a certain amount of days per week, at home, working from home as opposed to here? In terms of that as an incentive, I mean, it all goes to the pool of, what do we pay? How is our employment practice? And is that an attractive place to work? So I would ask that question. What are you seeing and feeling as you're the expert here?
Thank you.
I would definitely agree that, offering where you can, obviously, if you're in a public works job, you can't take the snowplow home. But if you have a job that, enables you to work from home, offering that as an option, as a condition of employment, that is definitely an advantage. Employees are looking for that flexibility in the workplace. And if you do have, the Toronto-centric type of organizations that are trying to get people back into the office. I know my son, he works for one of the large banks, and they are trying to, encourage people to come back or mandate people to come back. The federal government's going through the same issue with mandating people to come back into the offices, and it's detrimental to them. So I think offering that is, it aligns with, offering, paid training opportunities, being able to go to conferences to maintain your education, any other benefits that you might offer. We do a couple of benchmarking reviews for insured benefits as well. So anything that you can add that is not salary that allows you to be a little bit more competitive is definitely going to be to your advantage.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Roberts.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, I have a question either for maybe Mr. Lehman, possibly the CAO. we're not made aware of, we should not, of the staff changes that happen. But I do see a lot of new faces around the township offices. And I'm just wondering, in the past year or the year before, has there been an increase, Mark, an increase in the number of individual leaving the township? That's my first question for other opportunities.
Ms. Lehman? Ms. Lehman?
Thank you through you. So I started to update our turnover statistics in advance of kind of some budget numbers to present. And I think we're finally starting to see a downturn. So the turnover year over year just kept increasing. We were like around 20%, and now it's starting to come down 18, 15. So it's still high. You will see the new faces. I think we'll continue to see that kind of, we're also replacing leaves. So there's some comings and goings that aren't necessarily resignations, but I think it is on the downturn.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Roberts, a second question?
Yes, thank you. It's just a supplemental. Thank you, Chair. Is there anything more that the council or committee can do to help retention of employees? You say that it appears to be improving, but is there anything that we can do, because we do start budget soon? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lehman?
Yes, thank you. What a supportive question. I appreciate that. Yeah, with our new CAO in place, these are some things that we've started to discuss. I definitely agree. It's a wholesome approach. So we need to find a lot of different things. I think we do want to formalize our work from home practices that we've been doing into more of a policy, which we would likely bring here for your review and approval. And I think one thing that the senior leadership team has talked about is also a comprehensive benefit review. So we've always had as our practice to do the compensation review, but we haven't done that for benefits, and perhaps doing it in the middle of a 4-year cycle, but spreading it out from the compensation review. So it's something then we can get input and start to work on the hard benefits as well. So thank you. Yeah.
Okay, CAO Pink?
Thank you, through you. And yes, thank you very much for that question. And as I think Ms. Lehman has correctly pointed out, it's a basket of things. It's not just compensation, in my opinion, but the one thing that hasn't been touched on, and I just thought I'd just quickly refer to it, that I think is of considerable importance, is a respectful council staff relationship as well. I think we've all seen headlines across the country, across the province, of some pretty extreme behaviors and toxic relationships amongst some municipalities and their staff. And I commend council for to date a respectful relationship with staff. And I think that's very important in my experience and opinion in both recruiting and retaining staff. So I thank you for that and look forward to that continuing.
Thank you. I will read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Burry, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that the recommended non-union compensation adjustment described in report HR 2024-006 be approved and included in the draft 2025 budget, and that the compensation administration program policy be adjusted to increase the frequency of compensation reviews to every 4 years. So are there any further questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to both of you for joining us today and for the hard work on behalf of the township.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you. You as well. Take care. Okay, moving on now to our our delegations, which were included on our supplementary agenda. So at this point, I'll ask if Mr. Elliott is. He's rejoined, so he's online. Thank you.
Good morning.
Hey, Mr. Elliott?
Yeah, I was rejoining as a panelist, so I feel I might have missed. Did you introduce me? I apologize.
No, we were just waiting for your arrival. Thank you.
Okay, great. Wasn't sure.
You,
There was
you
an
have
awkward
win-
moment of silence there.
you have winter happening behind you.
Wow, we got to get in the spirit. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
That's not
Well,
really where I am. Trust me. I'm in a boarding office in Toronto.
Okay, so Mr. Elliott, we do have, you do have 5 minutes, and our deputy clerk is helping me keep us all on track today, so she has a timer going. So with that, I will turn the floor over to you.
Great. Thank you very much. And thank you, Madam Chair and Council. I think I met most of you before. Steve Elliott, volunteer president for the Muskoka Lake Snow Trails Association, which is the local snowmobile club, Port Carling, Bala, 12 Mile Bay area. My purpose here today is to speak to you just in advance of agenda item 11, which is report 2024-046, which speaks to the request of the MLSTA's request for the Township of Muskoka Lakes to sign a unilateral landowner agreement that covers off the various township properties that our current trails cover. So there's three key points that I want to get across today. But before I do that, I do just want to thank the township staff and council for the expediency here. I do know that we came to council rather late here with the request, and really appreciate the support of everyone on this, especially Mr. Colucci, who's been very helpful. So wanted to call that out. Three key things I want to get across here today that may be redundant, but I wanted to make sure that you're aware of them. The first thing is that we're not asking for any new trails. So what we're talking about here are trails that have been in place for 10, 20, 30, 40 years in the township. And so again, no new trails that we're asking for. The second, and I want to make this very clear, we're going to dive deeper here, but the second point is that if we do not get these agreements and sign, every single trail will close in our area. Every single trail crosses multiple township properties. We'll dive into that. And then third, we're not asking for anything different here than many other townships and municipalities have already done. So I'll bring that up as well. So just diving a little bit deeper in terms of the no new trails point, as I think most of you are aware, snowmobiling has been an organized sport in Muskoka for about 50 years. Our club in particular to celebrate our 30-year anniversary. Now, I've personally been riding in Muskoka since 2001, and to the best of my knowledge, all of the parcels of land we're talking about here have always been part of our trail network. So in my experience riding, I'm not aware of any changes. So they've been in place for a very, very long time. Now, while I can't speak for the past club executives, I do think there was a belief back in the day that township property was similar to crown land, meaning public access, meaning unlike where we have to make sure we have agreements with private landowners, I believe there was a misunderstanding that we didn't need to have agreements with townships. Fast forward to today, the OFSC have made it very, very clear that this is not the case. And so that's why I'm here as a relatively new leader organization to make sure that we have the right things in process. Now, moving on to point number 2. As I mentioned, unfortunately, and this is not meant to be any sort of threat, it's just reality, that if we do not get these agreements inside, our entire trail network will close. If you look at the information that's been provided by Mr. Colucci to council in the report, you can see a lot of our trails cross a unused road allowance at a 90-degree angle. So we're crossing 66 feet of township property, but that road allowance goes for a kilometer to the left and a kilometer to the right. So for us to reroute a trail, if we're not able to cross that 66 feet, is virtually impossible. I can't imagine the new landowner agreements we'd have to get on either side to get around that road allowance should we not be legally allowed to cross it. And that is the bulk of the types of properties that we're talking about here. In total, we have 130 kilometers of trail. There are crown land, there are reserve land, there are lakes, there are private landowners, and there's government properties. Out of our 134 landowners that we have to now have agreements with, government organizations make up 39, and the townships of Muskoka Lakes makes up 28. Of those 28, 11 are unused road allowances, 4 are lots on an old colonization road in Bala, and 4 are down in the sand pits down on Southwood Road. The remainder are small little properties. We cross a little corner of the parking lot in Jasmine Park, things like that. But again, they've been in place forever. The key point I want to make is that for the OFSC for 2025, they made it clear that if we are missing one landowner agreement on any section of trail, that entire trail closes. And if it's closed for more than a year, then it's closed forever, and we're not allowed to reestablish that trail network. So again, critical that we get these in place. The final thing I want to mention is that we're not asking for anything different. And very quickly, I just thought I would let you know, I researched within our organization, the following townships have already signed the standard agreement: Georgian Bay, Bracebridge, Lake of Bay, Severn Township, Tay Township, Oromadante, Town of Midland, Town of Penticangasheen, Tiny Township, and Algonquin. Now, I know they're not all in this area, but my point is the standard agreement from the OFSC that we're asking the township to sign has been assigned by all these other groups. So I know I'm time, but I really appreciate it. Again, they're not new trails. We're finally getting our paperwork in order. We really appreciate it. But as we know, snowmobiling is critical to Muskoka, and we really hope we can move forward with this. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Elliott, that was very well timed. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't have my mic on. I was complimenting you. That was very well done. Very well timed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so committee, we do have a report following, but this is an opportunity if you do have questions for our delegate. Mayor Kelly.
Thank you, and through you, Steve, a couple of questions. You mentioned 134 landowners. I got lost in your numbers a little bit. Is that the total number of parcels that need to be documented this way? Or is that the total number of discrete landowners?
It's the total number of parcels. Sorry, that's a good clarification. So yeah, the township makes up 28 of those parcels of the 134. Thank you.
And what where are you in that spectrum? How many private landowners have you got locked down already? How many to go?
We are actually doing amazing and updating. We are very, very close. There's only 3 landowners that we haven't been able to contact yet. Everyone else is in agreement and is signed or is about to sign. So we're missing 3. One is a property where we exit Silver Lake, and 2 are properties at the very end of our trail network in MacTier by the railway crossing there at the very end. So in those cases, we're sending letters to the people because we can't figure out how to get hold of them any other way. But we're about 98% of our landowners completely signed up, which is amazing, and is amazing support from the community for sure.
Okay, thank you. Supplemental?
Yeah, just one quick supplemental. It is amazing. Great work. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The last time we met, I think it was you, one of the Steves was heading off to a conference in Huntsville with the Ontario body. And at that time, you anticipated some pushback from the other clubs around the agreement. Did that come to any fruition? Did that even happen?
Yeah, well, there was pushback. However, it did not sway the OFSC's decision that landowner agreements are mandatory and will be enforced this year. So the backstory here real quick is, years ago, clubs had landowner agreements in binders, right? So there was no provincial visibility into what was in place or what wasn't in place. They were in somebody's garage in a binder. A couple of years ago, we went to an online tool integrated with TerraNet, land use plots. Now the OFSC has full visibility into what's there and what isn't there. So the reality now is they can't ignore the fact that they may not have an agreement because now they know, right? It's in the tool. So from a legal liability perspective, there's no latitude here. It's 100% they need to be in place, and the target is by December 1st.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions? Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, through, and this is a question. So, I'm very appreciative of all the effort, and I know there has been a lot of behind the scenes effort with the Steves and the mayor and some of the councillors. So I guess my question is, and I'm not sure about timing, so I guess that's the question, because I know Director Colucci is about to present the MOU discussion. I would just want to make sure, so I would ask Steve that everything is on the table, that in fact, is this the last hurdle? What the MOU township signs it? Are there still 6 other things that we don't know about yet, but are to come? That seems to be the nature of this particular discussion. So can you speak to that from your perspective? And then we'll get our directors. Thank you.
Mr. Elliott?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for the question. I think it is the last hurdle. We're in really good shape with the landowner agreements. Like I mentioned, the 2 at our end of the trail network in MacTier, Worst case scenario, we would terminate the trail short term at the Bass Lake Roadhouse restaurant and eliminate the last 1.5 kilometers through a swamp if we don't get landowner access there. The one concern is the property on Silver Lake. But again, we just haven't got a hold of the landowner. The trail's been there for 30 years. We have signs on their property. They leave the signs up in the summertime, nailed to their trees. So I'm pretty sure they're happy with us being there. We just haven't been able to get a hold of them. So I feel pretty strongly this is the last hurdle that we have in this regard.
Okay, thank you. Okay, are there any other questions, committee, for Mr. Elliott? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much for your hard work.
Thank
I
you.
know that,
Appreciate it.
and I appreciated you acknowledging Mr. Colucci up front as well. I think there's been a lot of work on behalf of staff to try and assist however possible with timing. So thank you, and we will look forward to his report shortly.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And we'll
Thank you.
move on to our next invited delegate, which is, sorry, not invited, our next delegation, which is Mr. McNair, item 9B. Welcome.
Thank you. Is this on? I guess we are.
Uh,
Good morning. My name is Sandy McNair. Our mailing address is 353 here Ontario Street, Collingwood L9Y 2M5. This is a follow-up to my delegation of September 11th and is in response to staff report ES 2024-015 made available on Friday, October 11th at 3:30. Since our constructive meeting on September 11th, I've been available to staff to clarify or accelerate this topic. Unfortunately, until late Friday afternoon, October 11th, I'd received no contact. To improve the quality of this decision, it is with immense respect for all the people involved that I request that this committee requests that staff update the staff report presented today to incorporate key missing information as follows. 1, the date when the oldest fireboat is scheduled to reach the end of its useful life, that based upon staff recommendation, Muskoka Lake will revert back to only 2 TML operated fireboats. That the asset plan already anticipates replacing the oldest fireboat entirely at township expense, and whether this boat has already been ordered or quoted along with the desired specifications. Avoid appearing to deny climate change by stating that what has been good enough to suppress wildfires in Muskoka in the past will be good enough in the future. We should learn from many other communities and their very painful lessons. More specifically, the report should acknowledge and respond to the facts that Muskoka will experience increased and more diverse droughts, increased temperatures, increased summer occupancy and open fire threats, consistent with the Fire Smart Community Assessment Protocol, identify increased wildfire threats such as the Hardy Lake Provincial Park and the main CN and CP rail lines. Number 4, that the specifications and capabilities of the current fireboats vary widely as they were donated when some of their prior owners found them to be surplus to their current needs. Number 5, to increase wildfire suppression capabilities and irrigation during droughts, fireboats would or should be equipped with pumps and nozzles designed to reach 1,000 to 1,600 feet rather than the current reach of 300 feet. Number 6, to dramatically reduce response times, the fire chief specification for the new fireboat includes twin 300 horsepower outboards so that the current average of 25 miles per hour in speed would be roughly doubled. Number 7, that fireboats complement the work of paramedics. And with increased occupancy and increased average ages, demand for paramedic services is escalating. Faster boats will provide a valuable boost in performance and demand as many waterfront properties have poor or no road access. That during the September 11th meeting, the condition that donors receive a 50% reduction in the emergency per diem rate for a fireboat and crew of 4 firefighters was replaced by a request to have a second rate, a non-emergency per diem rate, available to everyone that would be 50% lower than the emergency per diem rate. The staff report does not acknowledge or respond to this clear constructive request. Boosting forest health during droughts and potentially reducing the spread of wildfires should be encouraged by creating this non-emergency per diem rate for a fireboat with 4 firefighters. Number 9, that if a fireboat was used to taxi building or septic inspectors or by law enforcement officers in the performance of their duties, that a fire truck would be dispatched to the dock of the fireboat along with 4 firefighters and their equipment to perform this taxi service. Additionally, whenever one boat is in use, a second truck with 4 more firefighters is dispatched to another fireboat. Given this commitment of 2 fire trucks, 8 firefighters and 2 fireboats, the fire chief has informed us that fireboats have not and will not be used as taxis for inspectors or by law enforcement officers. That staff resist any restrictions on donations as a point of principle, rather than more respectfully acknowledging the facts of this situation and the greater good. And finally, that virtually every future scenario for Muskoka Lake will have fewer, better fire stations. Perhaps only two, one in Port Carling and one in Bala, and that more fireboats will provide timely, efficient, and cost-effective support to Muskoka's critical and yet increasingly fragile and threatened waterfront forests. There's a lot here. I'm very willing to expand or clarify as desired. An updated staff report that provides this critical information will position committee members to make a better informed and improved decision. I welcome any input and discussion. Thank you.
Thank you as well. Good timing. I appreciate that. Okay, committee, this is a chance to ask Mr. McNair some questions, but we will be also hearing from Chief Morrell, and I suspect that you'll want to have a response to some of these points, at least in your presentation. Is that correct, Chief Morrell? Okay. So perhaps what we can do is allow him to, Chief Morrell, to do his presentations as it relates to these questions that have been presented today as well. Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you to Mr. McNair. I guess the elephant in the room, at least from my perspective, is this a free fireboat? I guess my question is, you're contemplating a donation. As we contemplate the math from a business perspective here around the table, you know, the chief has indicated in his report not to usurp that, but is your community going to provide to the township a $500,000 fireboat as sort of rounded out by the chief in his presentation? I wonder that if, you know, if you come to us and say, well, we'll put in 248,000, but the townships, you know, so I guess that's my question to you. Is your group prepared to provide to the township this brand new fireboat at no charge to the township?
Thank you, Mr. McNair.
Certainly. Thanks for the question. Short answer, yes, but the specifics are going back to May when I first approached the fire chief and asked, was there interest in another fireboat? And the answer was yes, very much so. Maybe that's changed and they don't want one. It was clear to us from the get-go during our discussions in May, June, July, August, and in September, where I've had multiple meetings with the chief. Some of the councillors have had direct contact with me. In any event, our intent when we asked what is a fireboat, what are the specs of a typical fireboat, and we upped those. And the answer we were given on pricing was in the 200 to 250,000 area. And so our intent was to provide the entire funding for that boat. Rather than has happened in the past where we give a boat, and some of those boats have already been used and are surplus to that person's needs, this would be a boat that would be ordered and spec'd by the township, and we would merely provide a check for the full amount. So the intent that I had based on all of those discussions over all these many months, that we were in the 200 to 250,000 range. As I tried to interpret what was in the report, that 20 years from now, the replacement of a boat would be 500,000, but maybe I'm misunderstanding where that 500,000 number came from. Now, maybe Chief Morrell has new information and things have moved sharply from his earlier assumption that it would be in a 200 to 250 range. The boat that was donated to Seguin was 250. Maybe it's moved a lot. So yeah, our intent is to cover it. Now, do we cover absolutely everything? No, there's going to be an operating cost of roughly 10,000 a year, which is not our intent to cover that. But we will also provide you with a revenue stream, because I know that a number of our neighbors will be wanting to hire this boat to water their forest during drought conditions. Forest health is a real issue, and during droughts, which we know are becoming more and more severe, watering your forest makes all kinds of sense. So the boat needs to have the capability to do that. The current fireboats marginally might, but a hose that can, a system that can throw the water 1,000 to 1,600 feet will do much, much better than one that can throw water 300 feet. And that might not normally be a tool that a fire department would ask for. That's something that we're asking for because we think that's incredibly prudent. The standards for fireboats by, provincial or national standards may not have caught up with fighting wildfires from fireboats, but we think that we should be on the forefront of that. And the incremental cost at the time of buying a boat to have 2 pumps and 2 hoses, one that's extremely longer reach, is not material. To add it later on, different.
Okay. Thank you.
Does that help with your?
Thank you.
Thank you. Chief Morale, I think you probably heard that question about just the cost of the boat. Could you just clarify that piece right now?
Yeah, through you to committee. Good morning, committee. The representative cost that I had conversation with Mr. McNair back in May was $210,000, which was reflected in our budget. But since then, I have found to get a Class 5 fireboat, which is a fireboat that actually has a classification. We asked Georgina Fire and the manufacturer of their boat, and that's where we found the new price of $340,000, today's dollars, for a new fireboat.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Kelly.
Thank you. And through you, hi Sandy. I just, I'm trying to understand 3 sections in your letter, 9, 10, and 11. And I'm just trying to understand what the issue or the point is that you're raising. The first one, number 9, has to do with the use of a fireboat for to be used as a taxi for building or septic inspectors. I got lost on this thing about a fire truck being dispatched to the dock of the fireboat along with 4 fighters. I'm not sure I know what that means.
One of the conditions we asked for was that the fireboat not be used to taxi staff in the performance of those 3 duties. That if those people happen to be volunteer firefighters, great, and they're there to perform firefighting duties, we have no issue with that. Staff is advised that they would not want any restrictions on who would be or how the boat would be used. So I put all of that detail in there. I think you can get confirmation from the chief that when a boat is in use, it must have a truck at the dock and it must have 4 firefighters on board because they could get a call.
Gotcha.
And they have to go immediately to that call.
Okay, understood now.
So that's what that verbiage is all about. And I'm sorry to have to go into so much detail, but
No.
there was pushback from staff on any restrictions on how the boat would be used.
And so number 10, literally the conclusion of the chief is if that's the restriction, then we'll never use it for the taxiing service.
Right. And if you're never going to use it as a taxi, then why resist?
Yeah. All right. The last one for me and is number 11, and placing restrictions on donations as a point of principle rather than more respectfully acknowledging the fact of the situation. I'm not sure what restrictions you're concerned about.
The restriction we asked for is that the boat not be used for bylaw enforcement officers because it's going to require 2 trucks, 8 firefighters, 2 boats.
Yeah.
And staff is requesting that they can do that. And if we're going to donate $350,000 boat to the township, we'd like to know that it's not going to be used to ferry bylaw enforcement officers around the lake.
Oh, and so that literally is what you mean by restriction on donation.
That's right.
I got you. Okay. I missed that. Thank you.
And when we put that in our original request, there was total pushback on it.
Thank you. Thank you. You're complete. Any other questions for Mr. McNair? Seeing none. Thank you very
I was
much.
planning on staying until the finish of this total discussion. I don't know if that's going to give me an opportunity to respond to anything that the chief may say, but I just want you to know I will be here.
That is great. And I think what I see that Councillor Zavitz, you do have your hand up. Just from a process standpoint, I'm going to take a 50-minute break now, and then we're back on the 2 topics just for your own timing. The 2 immediate topics will be the 2 topics we just talked about. But oh, you'll be right up. Councillor Zavitz, did you have one final question?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, just to make sure that after the chief speaks, that we would have Mr. McNair here, just if there were any questions that came as a result of that he could come back to the podium and we could ask of him. Is that proper procedure?
Okay.
This is healthy debate, right?
Thank you. I was just confirming process with our deputy clerk. Yes, that's fine. Thank you. Okay, committee, it is just after 10 right now, so I'm going to ask that we be back here for 10:15. And we will continue on today's agenda. Thank you very much. Okay, committee, welcome back. Just want to confirm that those that are on Zoom are back as well. Great. So committee, just before I move on to item 11A, I did want to go back to the question about pecuniary interest. Just to ask once again, if there's any members of committee that have a pecuniary interest that they would like to declare on today's agenda. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. For the community futures discussion, I will be declaring a pecuniary interest. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
State why.
Oh, can you please state why?
I'm secretary.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. I will now be welcoming to the stage Director Colucci on item 11A.
To the stage, very good.
I know. I'm working on it today.
I plan not to dance today. Thank you very much. Well, good morning, Madam Chair and members of committee. So the report before you.
Committee. Thank you.
The report before you is to provide authorization to sign a memorandum of understanding between the Township of Muskoka Lakes and the Muskoka Lakes Snow Trails Association for the use of township property for snowmobile trails. Appendix 1 identifies the locations of the township properties that the MOU will actually refer to the electronic map that's provided by District 7, so that changes in the trail do not require a revised MOU to be signed. We are working with the OFSC, the MLSTA, and our solicitor to finalize the form of the MOU for signature. The draft MOU is attached, including in Appendix 2, and Appendix 3 provides the $15 million liability insurance to cover MLSTA operations. It should also be understood that the MLSTA has operated the snowmobile trails in Muskoka Lakes for many years, and the MOU will provide additional liability insurance and protection to the township. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. Committee, are there any questions? Mayor Kelly, Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you. What we're actually going to pass, I think, or being asked to pass, is to grant the right on your behalf to sign the document on behalf of the township, subject to input from your lawyer, from our lawyer, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, that's correct. And we have already sent comments on the MOU, the draft MOU, to the OFSC. So we're working with the club and the OFSC to firm up that wording.
Okay. And so my simple question is, if any of us had questions that we would like to see answered, we obviously haven't seen the questions or the comments that went off. Is that something we should be raising here today, or would you just prefer we send you a note privately or separately to say, hey, make sure this gets covered?
For sure. If you send it to me directly, then I can address it with the solicitor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you to our director. So just a couple of small pieces of the negotiated puzzle over the years. I know last year we worked with the club and allowed two-way passing on the Bala Falls Bridge. And I just wanted to make sure that the integrity of that continues this year. I don't think it was a one-year thing. It was a ongoing. And so I don't see it referenced here. Is there a subtle nuance? Is there a basket of small, by the way, things that we somehow don't see here? Question?
Director Colucci.
For you, Madam Chair. So there is an other part of the MOU. So we will add things in there. So, the reference to the District 7 electronic map will be added in there. And if there are any other requirements between the club and us, then we'll add those in under the other section.
Okay. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. Just to further through you to, I know we got kind of stuck a few years ago with not asking the district to not plow that snowmobile trail that we had in Bala. or lift the plow a bit, apparently, and I'm just not sure that along with this is that conversation. Have we asked the district to do those things?
So the Snowmobile Club, or through you, Madam Chair, the Snowmobile Club is negotiating separately with the district on their properties. As far as maintenance of the roads, you know, I'm not familiar with that exact area, but I'll certainly talk to the club and see if there is anything that we need to do, because township does maintenance on behalf of the district for the roads. So more than likely, it's our own staff that have to be notified of that.
It's sorry, if I may. It's more, because we have had, like, I'm going back to the early 2000s where we actually had to direct. Because it's the actual main plow that comes down 169. So it's not the maintenance that our staff does particular, it's that one plow driver. I know exactly where he lives too. So, you know, anyhow, it's interesting because I do believe that there is a specific ask that has to come. And I would just say that if we could pay attention to that a little separately, because I don't want us to miss that one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I see Councillor Roberts and then Councillor Boseworth.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to Director Colucci. For the benefits of those that have not read your report that are in the that are online, could you summarize specifically what the township's concerns were with the memorandum of agreement?
Okay, thank you. Director Colucci?
Certainly through you, Madam Chair. So there are a couple of sections in the MOU that restrict the liability of the club. You know, for instance, it refers to, you know, only registered permit holders. So, you know, our solicitor feels that that's a little bit too broad and would like to narrow that down to anyone that's using the snowmobile trail. And there is another clause that sort of restricts the liability similarly based on users, and also it restricts for snowmobile usage only, but the solicitor understands that if we create a trail, that other users could be on that trail. So we could have snowshoers or hikers or you know, cross-country skiers on the trail. So, you know, we want to sort of narrow that down to say that, you know, since we're creating the trail, the club is creating it, that, you know, those types of liabilities should be covered by the insurers as well.
Thank you. Councillor Boseworth.
Yeah, I guess a question to Director Colucci. It seems numerous of our neighbors have signed this, and the sense I get is that they've signed it without modifications. And you know, from the OFSC's point of view, they have to deal with many municipalities across Ontario, probably not all 444 of them, but a good number. And do you think that we will, is there a chance that we could get to it with, you know, minimal conditions changed, much like our neighbors?
Director Colucci?
Chair. So I have had some feedback from the club that the OFSC is considering implementing some of the requests and maybe not all of them. So that's why we left the report open to come up with a suitable, you know, agreeable wording for the agreement. So, you know, I think, you know, we have a good chance of coming to something that will be acceptable to both ourselves and our solicitor. And subsequent to the solicitor reviewing the agreement, we've also sent a few reports to him from other municipalities around us that have signed it without any changes. So he has an understanding of that as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Kelly?
Thank you. Just and through you, just a quick follow-up. We mentioned the district. I know the district is going through a similar exercise. Do we work with the district on sharing ideas and notions so that we kind of wind up at the same place, or are we operating in two separate spheres?
Okay, thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. So we have been in communication with the district, and you know, the club had a separate meeting with them. We weren't at that meeting, but there was an email that was shared between us. And their legal team is also looking at the agreement, but they haven't come up with wording changes yet.
Okay, committee, I do have a resolution, a question? Okay, Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. With the appendix that we have that I count 27 locations. I thought I heard Mr. Elliott say there were 28. And that, have we covered everything, or was that just, I didn't hear it properly?
Okay, Director Colucci.
For you, Madam Chair. So I think the 27 there, I think there's one map that has 2 locations on it, but so there is 28 separate spots. But as I mentioned earlier, that we won't be referring to these separate locations. We'll be referring to the electronic map that's provided. And I've already signed a data sharing agreement so that that map, which is already on the district GeoHub, will be used for establishing the route in all the locations.
Thank you. Okay, I have this resolution moved by Councillor McIntyre, seconded by Councillor Kent. Be it resolved that the Director of Operational Services be authorized to finalize a memorandum of understanding with the Muskoka Lakes Snow Trails Association for the use of Township of Muskoka Lakes property by the MLSTA, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the necessary documentation which are to the satisfaction of the Director of Operational Services and the Township's solicitor. Are there any comments? Mayor Kelly.
Thank you, and through you. I guess from the report, and I've seen it in other places, and I think I've heard it today, we seem to take comfort from the fact that we've never had anything like this before, that we've never documented it before. And somehow I think we're supposed to take comfort from the fact that you know, Lake of Bays or somewhere else has signed it as submitted. And I quite frankly don't think that either are relevant to the circumstances we're under. We need to make sure that we have taken a diligent approach to understanding the risks that this thing represents, this trail run represents, and that the risks are at least adequately covered by the document. I'm not talking about tying anything up. Quite frankly, the issue that I see, we're finally going to sign a document, which is great news. We're finally going to have it, you know, reduced to writing. It's likely going to survive forever. So this is the opportunity we have to get it right. And I think we need to exercise on behalf of our constituents whatever diligence we need to make sure that it's as good as it gets, and be mindful of the fact that one of the other parties that's going to have a different perspective is the district, which I mean, they shouldn't be the same. They have different interests, you know, than we do. But the fact of the matter is, they're applying, I think, an equally diligent approach to understanding this. The other thing, quite frankly, is if we don't start questioning some of the stuff that troubles us, we either won't understand what we're doing, or we will understand what we're doing and sign off on something that doesn't look out for our best interest. We don't push back on to OFSASC. It'll never get better. Now's the chance to make it right, as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you. Councillor Zavitz and then Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, and through you. I would echo the mayor's comments, and I think too to Councillor Nishikawa. So you're hearing from 2 Ward A councillors very intimate with the whole notion of snowmobiling as it relates to, let's call it BALA. There are at least 3 establishments that benefit economically from the snowmobile traffic. I think it's important to mention the care and maintenance piece that we as a township either are responsible for or could be responsible for. What happens is an errant plow comes along, completely cleans off both sides of the bridges on Highway 169, and now everybody's driving on pavement. As opposed to leaving the trail essentially like it, you know, snow packed, if you will. And even onto our new $2.5 million bridge on Battle Falls Road, where one side has sort of been designated for snowmobiles and then the other for that pedestrian traffic. So my point is to get to that is the care and maintenance piece, responsibility of this township. I can't speak for Port Carling, but I can sure speak for BALA, that that needs to be inherent. You know, we have a new public works director here. And this is a long-term feel, if you will. I would stress that, is there a way to build that in? What are the responsibilities of the township as it relates to, or the things that we'll do as a matter of course to keep that snowmobile access through Bala functional.
Okay. I don't know if there was a question in there.
Well,
Is
the
it-
question is, if I might, you know, I use care and maintenance, but whatever you want to call it. If we don't do it and the district doesn't do it, they'll either sand the trails or, you know, they go through the course Vala to get to the
Right.
key, et cetera, to our vital Vala Bay Inn to open food there. If we obliterate those trails in Vala by not being aware, and this has
Right.
happened a lot. Oh, geez, we didn't know, we won't do it again. Well, so care and
from an-
maintenance.
Yeah, so Director Colucci, are you comfortable that this document or understanding somehow covers off the care and operations of how we are maintaining the roads?
Okay, well, through you, Madam Chair, so, you know, this MOU actually refers to properties, but not road allowances. So, you know, though, you know, we understand that there is some operational things that staff are aware of and that take care of each year. And I think what's a good plan is, you know, we do other work on behalf of the club. So we have the bridge, you know, over here in Port Carling installed. So, you know, we'll be, you know, operational staff will be meeting with the club to arrange all of these items, you know, before the snow season. And, you know, we'll plan to do that each year, but it's not really part of the MOU because the MOU is really for the use of township property and not road allowances because the Highway Traffic Act allows snowmobiles on a road allowances. So.
Thank you. Supplemental?
Supplemental.
And Councillor Roberts and Councillor.
The dialogue piece that you just mentioned is vital in Bala. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And through you, just a question and then a comment to the director. What is the drop dead date that we're working to with the lawyer and the federation that we need to get this signed and done?
Thank you. Director Colucci?
For you, Madam Chair, you know, I think the club would like it to be before the first snowfall, which we don't know when that will be. But it is in OFSC's hands right now because we've given our comments to them. So we're really waiting for their response back. And once we get that, we'll talk to our solicitor and hopefully come up with wording and be able to have it signed sometime for the next council meeting.
Okay, and one of the, so Madam Chair, now with the comments, I'm very concerned that we won't have snowmobiling in Muskoka if something if there's a last minute change or something like that. So I'm sure the director will do everything he can do to make sure that we do as much as necessary without compromising what the our worship said about we've got to do the proper job and assessment here. From an insurance point of view, because some of the concern is related to insurance, I believe. So I guess I have a question for Director Donaldson, if he is on, about our insurance. And I'm wondering if we need to have a special endorsement to reflect the coverage for specific areas of risk. So that we do that it's not insurance that holds us up here.
Okay, Director Donaldson, can you walk us through our insurance?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, committee. So I have spoken with our insurance agent. They've confirmed that we are covered for any incident that may occur on our trail, but having us named on the OFSC policy then makes their policy the policy of first recourse, and they would cover the first portion of any claim, but we would have coverage for any excess on our own policy as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just for clarity on that, I think that's where there's a bit of trying to understand with the insurance piece, that part of the negotiation or the discussion right now is ensuring that the snowmobile club is the first. Maybe I can expand. Could you expand a little bit further on that?
Right. So we'll be named on the OFSC insurance policy. So it just provides us extra liability coverage. So right now there are trails, like last year, there was trails built in Muskoka Lakes, and we weren't named on their policy because we didn't have this landowner agreement signed. So now, once this agreement is signed, then we will be named on their policy. So it provides an extra layer of coverage. And as Mr. Donaldson mentioned, our current policy does cover any liability related to incidents on our property related to snow bills or on our roads as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nishikawa, then Councillor Bosemarth.
Thank you. Through to you, to the director. I just going back to that discussion about the communication between the township and the district of what we'd like to see every year. I think mostly what I wanted to understand was that we weren't going to have the same conversation next year if there is no changes in the policies, that in fact it was confirmed through you that we would always make this application to the district or request to the district every year without council having to come forward to ask you to do so. If I made that clear.
Right. So for you, Madam Chair. So yes, I mean, that's what we'll do is we'll, operationally we'll talk to the club, and then we'll come up with those locations that require special attention and talk to either our road staff or the district. And, because we communicate regularly with the district staff as well, and, come up with a plan for that. So that hopefully we won't have to discuss this again.
Thank you. Councillor Bosemarth.
I'd like to take a little more positive view on this. I think from the OFSC down, this is a tremendous move for the snowmobile community. They are going to get, as the mayor said, once we get this in place, we will probably won't have to touch it again for years and years and years. And that will be the same all across the province. And so this is a very, very progressive step to ensure that this industry and pastime that is, there are just so many people in Muskoka that enjoy it. And I also just want to thank Director Colucci and anybody else in the staff who has been so supportive of this. It's really important. We moved it quickly, and we'll be joining a very important group of people who support a very big contributor to our economy.
Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you. And through you, just a question to Director Nick. Does this MOU usurp the previous discussions that I've been privy to as it relates to the district and riding along 169 and I suppose 118? Is that a separate issue, and is that a red herring?
Sorry, Director Colucci.
Through you, Madam Chair. So yeah, I mean, district roads are separate. The issue on riding along those two, like 118 and 169, is an issue with a separate district bylaw, which the club has to deal with the district separately on. So, we're dealing with our roads and our private lands here in this MOU, but anything to do with the district, I know that they have met separately with the district and are trying to resolve those issues and come up with a plan for not only 118 but also other road crossings.
Okay. Thank you. Seeing no other hands up, I did read this. I read the resolution, so I will now call the question. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dr. Colucci. Thank you very much for all the hard work that you have done. This is an important part of our winter economy. And this due diligence is good for the township. So thank you. Moving on, Chief Morrell, item 11B.
Good morning, committee, and through you. Before committee is staff report ES 2024-015. This report came about, and this is a report that responds to a delegation request to raise community funds for the purchase of a fireboat on Lake Muskoka, and examines the current demand for fire services on Lake Muskoka, the risks in the region, and the benefits of a third boat. It also examines the implications of maintaining and staffing the additional vessel with the caveats that were presented by the delegation. There is a recommendation in the report that committee recommend to council that the township accept the community donation of the fireboat for Lake Muskoka and the issuance of the charitable tax receipts to that effect. Also, that there is a recommendation that committee recommend to council that at which time the existing fireboat on Lake Muskoka that will reach the end of its useful life in 2031, which is not in the report, that it would not be replaced so as to have the effect of maintaining only 2 fireboats following that date on Lake Muskoka. There's also a recommendation that council agrees to the fire service level enhancements through the asset management levels of the asset management service level study, and that committee recommend to council that the township not provide any confirmation of the other stipulated conditions in the delegation request from September 11th. I now stand for questions from council or from committee.
Thank you.
Pardon me.
So committee, are there any questions for Chief Morrell? Councillor Nishikawa.
Hi, Chief, sorry. For
morning.
you to the chief. What happens when the next group of people come along and want to donate a fireboat for their cause in their community on Lake Muskoka, not far from this particular boat, but there isn't other requests coming, and so we'll just look at the same type of report and things and looking for your direction. Thank you.
Thank you.
Through you, Chair, through to committee and to councillors specifically, I expect it would go about the same way that this delegation request occurred. There was a request made through staff. Staff asked the delegate to present to committee on the issue. Committee then made the recommendation that staff come back with a report that wholesome provided some information for committee to consider, and then staff would go back and look at best practices on how to evaluate an additional resource and then bring that information forward in that report.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kent.
I may have missed this, but thank you, and through you to Ryan. My understanding was that the intention was to get an extra boat on Lake Muskoka rather than to have it replace the boat. And I realized that's not until 2031. But was that the intention of the group that was putting this forward as a donation? Okay. That it would be a one and then taking one out?
So through committee, through chair to committee, I believe that the original request was just for an additional boat at that time. And then the request changed while with staff, when staff were evaluating the request, staff looked at all of the possible factors when you look at adding a resource like a fireboat to any fire service. And through that process, we determined that there were an adequate amount of fireboats already existing in the fleet today. So as a way to prove what the delegate had wanted in terms of replacing an asset that's already existing with fundraised assets, we felt that staff felt that it was a good idea to bring that back to committee with that option.
So let me just clarify. Is that what Mr. McNair wants?
Oh, your microphone. Sorry, Councillor.
Sorry. So let me just clarify. Is that what the delegation wants? They want two boats? I mean, sorry, an extra boat, or are they happy with the fact that it's going to be taken out of service? The new boat becomes, the other boat gets taken out of service and that one replaces it in 2031.
I believe the original delegation request was for a third boat.
We're changing their request at all. I just want to make sure I understood that.
Through
Yes.
chair to committee, yes, we are adjusting their request to fit with how we would evaluate a resource augmentation anywhere in the service using best practice.
Okay, Councillor Roberts, Councillor Bosenworth, Councillor Burry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have two questions. The first one, both to through you to the fire chief. Fire chief, on the boat within the boats that we currently have, what is the kind of say limitations or the capacity that to fight a fire from the water? How far back can the water hoses project water to fight a fire? Is that question clear?
Okay, thank you.
Through
Chief
chair
Morrell?
to committee, yeah, currently today, our master fire streams that exist on the fire boats can only level a stream of water 300 feet, 90 meters.
Okay, thank you.
And
Yes.
the second question with this is, and I'll connect the dots during comments, but once I asked this strange question, on taking the water fighting services out of it, and we're talking about our current fleet of fire vehicles. Am I correct in my understanding is that you have a training program where volunteer firefighters take the trucks out and get used to driving them on somewhat of a schedule?
Yeah, through
Okay,
chair to
thank you.
committee, yes, we do.
Thank you. Councillor Bosemuth?
Yes, and through you, Chief Morrell, I wonder if you could comment about Sandy's suggestion that climate change might have the impact of the required to be able to have, essentially enhanced service and having more boats, or certainly a boat that can shoot water farther, and his suggestion that to offer a service where you can effectively, water properties up to 1,000 feet back. Is that something that is happening around the country or generally happening because of climate change? And should we be thinking about that with this offer?
Thank you. Chief Morrell?
Through chair to committee, yes, that is a process that is done when there is a wildfire approaching. So there is work that is done. It's called values protection that is performed by the MNRF when there's a wildfire approaching. Typically, they'll set up portable pumps and put sprinklers around a dwelling to raise the humidity levels around that dwelling prior to a wildfire approaching. For committee's benefit, typical wildfire spread by way of embers that travel almost, a couple miles from the actual fire source. So embers can easily be suppressed if you have a sprinkled property in advance of a wildfire. The use of a boat to water the grounds around a property, I'm not sure if that is taking place by any fire service near us. I would see some value in this process if there was a wildfire approaching.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Burry?
Thank you, and through you, and I'm going to give you, Fire Chief Morrell, the opportunity to explain to us why our township is uniquely set up with an agreement with the MNRF if we do have wildfires to actually have aircraft, which are really the only way you can put out a wildfire. Maybe you could help us understand the unique relationship we have with the MNRF and with the ability to get the firefighting aircraft.
Through chair to committee, thank you for that question. So in the previous version of council, the last term of council, they approved a more enhanced municipal fire agreement with the MNRF, which allows for us to call for the MNRF to come and assist us with wildfire response at reduced rates through a contract system. We also moved a lot of responsibility to the MNRF where the fire exists more than 1,000 feet from the center line of the roadway. So those resources are held in place in Haliburton, and sometimes they are relocated closer at the Muskoka Airport. You may see some yellow assets sitting there at the airport, middle of the fire season. That is for air assets. We call often on the MNRF during the season. I will note this year, we did not have to call on them at all. And the forest fire danger rating did not raise above high at all this year. In fact, it only met high for maybe a week. So this year is a rarity, but we enhanced that MNRF municipal wildfire agreement in the last term of council, and that agreement allows for us to call on their assets and their resources as required.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Zavitz?
Thank you, and through you, two parts to my question, to two different entities. I guess, first of all, to Mr. McNair, if I might, is there a shelf life to this donation? And I guess
Thank you.
if I might position that,
Okay, so
From-
would you like Mr. McNair to come to the podium?
please.
Okay, Mr. McNair?
Thank you. Thanks for the question. Shelf life. This has been more involved than I thought it was going to be already when we met in May, June, July, August, September. My commitment to Muskoka is still fairly extensive. And I guess if this took another whole year, I'd slug it out. But I would really hope that it wouldn't take another whole year. I'm still a little shocked because I got new information today about the price that we've gone from 210 to 3.25. But I would, so there's some urgency, I guess, on the pricing if things are going to keep escalating it like that. But no, I don't think there's a particular shelf life. If I may, Chair, I have spent an extensive amount of time with the Ministry of Natural Resources aviation team. And while they may have a formal agreement, they confirm to me that their fleet is in motion and they make a province-wide assessment. And sometimes that involves Quebec and sometimes that involves Manitoba. And so the notion that there's a plane sitting at an airport near Bracebridge, I am told that is not the case. That if we're in high alert, and doesn't matter, Timmins, that's where the fleet will be. And so hoping that we're going to have our fires put out by water bombers, I provided me with no comfort. Hence, we're still committed to raising the money to do this. And if there really were in an Armageddon situation where, you know, MacTier's on fire and it's marching towards us, I don't think the shoreline of Muskoka is going to be the first priority. And yet, if we did lose the shoreline forests, I know my property value, the vacant land value will just fall precipitously. And I doubt that I would rebuild. And then if someone else comes along, I doubt they will rebuild anything that looks like what we have. So there'd be a huge knock-on effect for the township if we did have a significant shoreline fire. Anyway, I feel very strongly about this. The task today has become bigger, so that's causing it to become a bigger task. And so I'm going to need to reach out to a larger pool of people. And so that's going to take more time and effort. And I need a good story. And so far, I don't have a good story.
Okay. Good, thank you.
Did you have
I do have a
second question?
supplemental.
Thank you very much, Mr. McNair.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McNair. And I wonder if I might, to staff, and I guess through the CAO, I guess it leads to the second part of my question, which is, this has sort of gone from a want to, a want, trying to make it into a need, I suppose. At what point in time does this discussion step off here and go to a level of service, our level of service study that we're doing, where we contemplate that, or the committee contemplates that on a whole different level than this? Right now, this has sort of come to us as, hey, listen, we'd like to provide a fireboat, but if it's a level of, this is obviously a level of service increase. I don't, what else could you call it? If you put a third boat on Lake Muskoka. So my question through staff, I guess through our CAO, would be, at what point in time do we step off to this being contemplated on a greater scale? Thus my question of, is there a shelf life to this thing? Because it could take a while. Thank you.
Thank you. CAO Pink?
Thank you, through you, and excellent question, Councillor Zavitz. I think I would note a couple items. Staff certainly is appreciative of the community interest and the desire to recognize changing climate and emergency preparedness and the generous donation. I think staff is certainly cognizant of the benefits of any donated fire apparatus. But we certainly have to look at the cost implications of that and our need. I think what I would remind Council of is Council passed a fire master plan, I believe in 2022. It did recognize through a SWOT analysis the threat of a changing climate and wildland fire. I think Chief Morale can certainly go into depth about our emergency preparedness exercises, and we do recognize wildland fire as certainly an emerging threat. However, that fire master plan did not identify the need for additional fireboat apparatus. So hence staff's, again, gratitude for the community interest. And certainly it's council's prerogative to accept the donation. However, staff has not identified that need, nor has the fire master plan. And hence why, if you look at the recommendation, there is the alternative that should you wish to accept it and keep 3 fireboats ultimately on Lake Muskoka, that be considered through the level of service study that's currently ongoing. So I hope that helps clarify.
Councillor Edwards.
Yes, thank you very much. Through the chair, so we've got till 30/31 for the fireboat has retired. Is there any resale value in that if we sell it, or if we keep 2 boats? In other words, we get the new one, which is going to be better, going to be faster, going to get us there. Can we sell the other one off to offset some of our operating costs?
Yeah, through the chair to committee, I do not know what the resale value of a 30-year-old workboat will be at that point. I could look into that, but at this point in time, a lot of our fireboats, the overall plan is to replace the oldest fireboat and then look at the rest of the fleet and ensure that we're actually maintaining the right standards in terms of fireboats. Prior to my arrival, we had no identified standard for fireboats. So now at least we have a standard, which is a Class 5 fireboat, which is a slight difference between Seguin and ourselves. The boat that they purchased in Seguin was considerably less money because it was not the same class fireboat that we're after, which is a Class 5 fireboat, which is a fireboat that can meet the insurance implications for the islands.
Thank you. So Seguin is not a Class 5, but you know, they were happy to get the boat at the time because I was up there when they were showing it off. And they were very proud of it. So thank you for that.
Okay, Councillor Nishikawa, sorry.
Thank you through you to, actually, it's, I don't know who this is going to go to, but I guess my concern is much along the same line about the service level study and information that I've received from the chief and the comment he just made about the insurance premiums for islanders. And that's a whole different conversation for me. And I actually am concerned that we're making decisions today based on that insurance piece for the islanders. So, you know, we used to talk about being so close to a fire hall or whatever to get the insurance premium, which many of us don't get to have. Even those of us that are located between 2 fire halls, but it's up to the insurance companies, honestly. And so I'm a little concerned that we would be maybe making a decision today based on a service level, because that's what I'm feeling like it is. The islanders have already taken the risk of owning an island, and I don't know what their insurance, nor that I need to get into what their individual insurances are. But I don't know that we can start making decisions at our township level on every individual difference of someone's insurance piece.
Okay.
Like it's a bigger, so now because I do understand, like you know, sure, we have a Torrance fireboat that was purchased by the islanders 30 years ago. Not that long. I think it's 25 or closer, but you know, it's still many years. And it was a $50,000 investment at the time. And it's done its job. I'm not clear that we need to have the best of everything. That's where I'm a little bit concerned about, because I don't know what we gain, again, if we're only basing this all on insurance. So that, I don't know, I'll get an answer today.
Chief Morrell.
Yeah, just through the chair to the committee. If you own a thing and you are an employer in the province of Ontario, it's best for you to meet a best practice. The lowest best practice of a fireboat is a Class 5 fireboat. That is what we're requesting. If we were to buy just a workboat that would just access the islands, then we would buy just a commercial workboat, which is some of our boats today are currently just commercial workboats, which is fine. But then we would then be talking to council about reducing the service level for what we are telling people we're providing for with that appliance. So when you're an employer in Ontario, you should be buying the best thing to reasonably take every precaution to protect the worker. So that is why we chose the Class 5 fireboat as the fireboat version that we should be looking for when we look for fireboat replacements.
Okay.
May I ask though, again, it's not, we haven't discussed the service level piece. And I'm just not sure. Because again, I know people that are deeply in the bush. And what are we providing them? They still have a 911 number. But again, it's that whole conversation of what the service level is. And I'm not sure that I'm there yet for this conversation.
Thank you. And I was going to suggest a path or I wanted to do a bit of a straw poll, but Councillor Kent, I'll let you forge ahead. And
sorry for my late entry. When I'm listening to the whole discussion of service level, when I look back at your report and it's a 43-minute response time, whether we have this boat or we don't have this boat, I don't think our service level changes. And I don't think the insurance issue for islanders, I mean, people at the island, I can tell you as an islander, the insurance companies assume you have zero value. Every time there's a fire, it's gone. So 43 minutes is not going to solve that problem. So I was just wondering how it really doesn't help us or the average Muskoka Lakes community member. It might help the locals who are worried about the forest fire. Sorry. So.
Okay.
Through you, Chair, if I could quickly respond to that, it does help. So here's how it helps. So when we went through the fire master plan, I asked this same question because I was concerned about the amount of time that it takes for us to get to an island property or any water. I should actually accurately describe it as a water access only property because some of these properties over time have created accesses, driveways to the property that aren't adequate to support our fire apparatus. So a lot of people get value from fireboats. When I asked this question of the consultants, I was told to look at it like this. The original intent of a fire department was put in place, go back to the Chicago fire, the Great Chicago Fire. It was to protect areas from conflagration fires, large fires that were consuming areas. So if you can imagine on an island, there might be 4 properties. And I would tend to agree with today's furnishings and today's home construction. We more than likely will not save the first house that's fully consumed in fire. However, we will hopefully arrive in a timely manner to save the house that's next door, thereby saving, and I know this isn't something that council thinks about a lot, but the consultant made me think about this, taxable property within the township of Muskoka Lakes beyond the amount of time that it takes to rebuild that property. They were telling us at that time that it's a 3-year build on an island property. So if we were to lose 2 or 3 properties on an island where we could have saved 2 properties, that could be a significant hit on taxation, which would be the savings of 1 fireboat. That was how they made it make sense for me. But I would leave that to committee's decision on the service level review because we are in the middle of a service level review. And I agree with the councillor that until that review is complete, some of the service levels that we offer today are just continuations of what is already existing.
thank you. Councillor Bones-Mirth, I see your hand is up now. I was going to suggest doing a straw poll to cut directionally. I have not read the resolution yet, but I'm getting a sense from the table. So I just wanted to ask, do you have a comment that I was going to ask if we wanted to explore an amended resolution? So
actually, I have a question for Mr. McNair.
okay, Mr. McNair, would you like to come to the podium? Councillor Rosemarth?
Mr. McNair, my question to you is your suggestion of offering a fireboat seems conditional on their adding an additional fireboat to Lake Muskoka, taking it from 2 to 3. But as you can see, there's, there is some belief that we have an adequate number of fireboats on the lake. Would your offer still hold it under the condition that the fireboat will ultimately be a replacement for an existing fireboat. So from now till 2031, we'd have 3 fireboats on Lake Muskoka. And after 2031, we would only have 2.
Thank you for the question. It's a complicated situation. The data that's in the report on how fireboats are used and how infrequently they're used, I think needs to be viewed through the lens that until Fire Chief Morrell arrived, fireboats were not dispatched. We had a fire at a property right next door to us, and when it was called in, they said, "We've sent a truck. We will not be sending the Torrance fireboat." Chief Morrell has confirmed to me that would be a firing offense today. So the data going back to 2004, where there's so few dispatches, I think is in part because there was a deliberate policy in the fire department not to issue the boats in situations where they might have been quite effective. So I don't understand how that happened. It doesn't matter. It's spilt milk. My point is that the data on usage is, I think, understated based on what the actual demand is. And I think as we move forward, I made the paramedic point. There's lots of people that are deeply concerned about how they can get to a hospital faster. And the boat has an important role to play, as opposed to just hoping you can get an ambulance down your skinny lane and all the time that takes. And I think our ability and our responsibility to look after ourselves by doing the things we can control. I mean, I could not be meeting with you. I could be meeting with the province and trying to talk about how many more paramedics should be added to Muskoka, but I don't think I'm going to get as much traction as I hope we're going to get here. So back to your point, Rob, if it's going to take a year to get this boat manufactured, so that leaves us with 5 years. So 350 grand for 5 years is getting to be a bit of a stiff ask. So that would be sort of one concern. I mentioned the not dispatching. Many of us have sat in a room talking about environment first over and over and over again. And I believe that this boat has an important role to play, not only in dealing with wildfires, but also with drought. And for us to just sidestep drought, I view as a mistake. And the boat has an important role, a critical role to play during droughts in terms of this forest shoreline. I mentioned the water bombers previously. I think I've covered what I had. I don't know if I've answered your question yet, Rob.
Okay. Okay, Councillor Bosenworth, you are on mute. We can't hear you.
Sorry. Yeah, I think the question was answered more or less. So thanks.
Yeah, it's just the 5 years for 350 grand is a stiffer ask. I'm going to have to reach out to a huge number of donors in order to get those that'll believe that's a good use of 350 grand for 5 years.
Okay, Councillor Zavitz, I do have a resolution that we are drafting. Last comment.
Thank you.
So that I can move
Thank
this
you, and
forward,
through you.
please.
Because it will affect certainly how I vote on this resolution, even that there's a different one coming forward. But I guess we've scratched an itch here. I heard the chief indicate that there are some boats, fireboats, that are, in your mind, classified as a work boat. I wonder, 2 parts of the question. I wonder if you could clarify, is Torrance a work boat or a fireboat? Given what the councillor just said about $50,000 25 years ago. I know we've updated and upgraded, but is first part of my question, if I might.
Thank you.
Through the chair to the committee, we have not assessed whether or not these the vessels that are currently existing today are full fireboats. It's quite a lengthy checklist to go through. We could do that and bring a report back to committee about the capacity of the fireboats as they exist today. Today, they are work platforms that have the capacity to pump 500 gallons a minute, which is most of the requirement in a Class 5 fireboat. But there are some other components to the Class 5 fireboat that we have not assessed.
Thank you.
If I might, secondarily, thank you, and through to you. So, we did have 2 years ago a total loss in Torrance Bay, literally, a driver to the fireboat, and it was 2 cottages from ours. At night, fall, right? So we couldn't get our trucks down there. So the place burned in a second, but saved the next cottage and ours. To that end, the fireboat, dark at night, I mean, is the fireboat that we have, so boats, well-equipped enough to actually handle the threat of fire? And I guess that's a very large general question. It probably speaks to service level, but you know, we've opened a Pandora's box here, to my mind. How effective are these boats? Because that was a total loss.
Through the chair to committee, I would point to some of the assessments that we did in the report before committee are about the response times and about the limited uses of the boats that we currently use today. So the way that we assess ourselves is based on the 500 gallon per minute application rate. But that is all going to be, you know, based on the size of the fire that we encounter when we arrive. So if we are delayed in getting to the fire, it's an expectation that the fire will grow in size. The current version of the service that is before you, the Muskoka Lakes Fire Department, is a limited service, meaning that it is a volunteer service, meaning we hit a button and we hope that volunteers will show up. There are only 4 of us that are full-time, and 3 of those parties are uniformed. And those 3 parties yesterday got on a truck and put out a fast evolving vehicle fire just in the parking lot at the Foodland. So I could tell you that it is a very hard thing to predict where your fires are going to happen. In the case of that incident that you're talking about, the access to the property was limited, but we were able to get into that property, and it was a seasonal property that was consumed in fire. It had heavy smoke showing when I arrived, and I got there pretty quickly from onset of fire. I do not remember if at that time our fireboat was, oh yeah, it was in the water. Yeah, it was, because it did supply water to the trucks as they got situated and action that fire. So later on, it did its role of being a hydrant. That's another big role of a fireboat in our area, is they act as hydrants in non-hydrant areas because they supply the trucks that are actually working on shore. So I don't know if I answered your question, but okay.
Okay, so we're trying here to understand the next step on this. Staff actually had come up with a fairly creative resolution. I think I will give last comment now to Mayor Kelly, and then I will figure out which resolution I'm going to read based upon comments.
Well, thank you, and through you to Chief Morrell. Let me just break this down a little bit. If somebody were to offer you a $350,000 class, is it class 5 or class
5, yeah,
boat, to equip or to spec it out the way you like to have boats spec'd, I assume that would be a very extraordinarily generous offer and one that you would willingly accept. If you had the discretion, if it came without any conditions on it, and you simply had to use your professional judgment and the judgment of your leadership team as to how and where it gets parked, how and where it gets used, how and where and when it gets deployed, would that be a struggle? Would that be a challenge for our fire service to look after that kind of decision making? I sense the problem isn't the boat. The problem is the restrictions that come with. And the way I'm reading the proposed resolution in your report, it's basically acknowledging an extremely generous offer of a boat, but I'm trying to understand in the absence of the conditions, which is what you've got in the last paragraph here, committee recommend to council that not provide confirmation of any stipulated conditions on and on and on. Judgment would be reserved to you, if unless I'm mistaken, to operate the fire service and its assets and its human resources as you determine in your professional judgment.
Yeah, through the chair to the mayor, through committee. Yes to everything you just said. So yes, it is a great donation. It's a great opportunity to take something into the fire service. There are limitations though. Staff are very mindful of the fact that this township has to support the assets that are given to it. And this township also has to manage its affairs day to day through delegated authority through to the fire chief. And some of the stipulations that are being asked for would remove that ability to be delegated authority and may not be as affordable to township over the 10-year long-term plan for the township to be affordable.
Thank you. Okay, CAO Pink.
Thank you. Through you, I just wanted to add briefly to that question. Certainly, again, Yes, the conditions are of some concern to the offer, but I think, again, the fire master plan did not recognize the need for additional fire boats. It did recognize the need for a ladder truck. So it did put its mind to gaps in service. But yes, there's some, but also, again, you need to look at both need and the long-term cost implications. I think that's, in my opinion, more significant than the conditions necessarily, based on the change in response times and on the historical usage of the boat. There was not that identified need. And I think council needs to be cognizant that, yes, the year-to-year operational costs may be manageable. They're fairly nominal in the $10,000 to $15,000 range. However, in 25 years, a level of service will be established that there is now an additional fireboat on Lake Muskoka. And I think it will be extremely difficult for the community to accept that that fireboat will not be replaced in 20 and 25 years. So you are accepting that at that time, likely $500,000 to $1 million expense for that taxpayer at that time and that council at that time. And I think to put it into perspective, this may be one request, as we heard from Councillor Nishikawa. We may have a next request in a month. You may have a request every month for a new truck, a new boat, a new ladder truck. At what point does council say, one, we either don't need these, or two, future councils and future generations can't afford to continue to replace them? As we know, we have a number of assets currently that we're struggling to afford when their useful life is coming up. So that's the lens staff really looked at very diligently with this request. It wasn't just the imposed conditions that was the issue. It's really the long-term cost, and hence why staff's recommendation was to accept the gracious donation. However, at which time one of the two existing fireboats reach their end of useful life, this will take its place. I hope that explains the recommendation and the concern perhaps a little more clearly than the report.
Thank you. So I feel like I now have a few options in front of us, and so I am going to be looking to committee. The draft resolution, and I can read this one, that staff have created, I think, is trying to create a path forward, exactly as CAO Pink just said, that they're trying to work with the community who's generously offered to come forward, trying to look at the whole picture. I think the resolution as it, I'm rereading it right now. It talks to the idea of it replacing the oldest boat at what point, and I think it's 2031, that would just take over that boat at that point. And that unless there is a discussion on fire service level enhancements in the asset management level of service study that we're about to do. So I think staff have actually done in a very creative way, tried to pull together all of these pieces in the existing resolution, so that we're not getting ourselves too attached to a long-term commitment that committee may feel a bit uncomfortable with. So I just wanted to get a sense from committee, because the other direction we could go, we have two other, we could just say we would recommend to the township that we just wait to hear the outcome of the level of service study. Or we could just outright say, thank you very much for the generous donation, but we will decline at this point. So there's really three different options. And now I think that staff's recommendation is trying to create a path forward in the spirit of working with community, but also ensuring that we're protected. So I look at the committee now with a little bit of a straw poll. Or would you like me to read the original resolution and we vote on that? If we're comfortable with the original resolution, just a quick hands up. Okay, so then what I would say, the third one is we could, so the third one is we could just also just decline. So I got a sense that we could decline and say, thank you very much for or the other one is about the level of service, wait to the level of service study outcome. I feel like, and maybe I just want confirmation from CAO Pink. Do you feel like that if during our discussions and the level of service study, we do agree that we're satisfied with the current level of service and we're not looking to enhance it on a fireboat, does this resolution ensure that that's the case, that through this whole process, if we're accepting the donation of a fireboat from the community, that we're not then increasing it in our, like we're able to still have that conversation?
Through you, I believe, yes, you can certainly still have that conversation through the ongoing review. I don't think you do increase the level of service, although I guess you could argue you have temporarily. But in essence, what we're doing is accepting the generous donation as a replacement of the existing fleet. It's just a deferred. So again, you would increase the level of service temporarily for the 5 to 10 years until such time as one of the existing fireboats reaches its end of useful life.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Edwards?
I guess what I asked before, Morel, if we got the boat tomorrow, we could sell the boat the oldest boat now. We wouldn't have to wait till 3031. So we wouldn't be increasing the level of service. We'd be making it better with a boat that can handle fire. Better, right?
Through the chair to the councillor in the question. It's a great question. Staff did contemplate that option. That would remove a fireboat that exists today that is moored in a spot and most likely donated for that area abruptly. Staff did not advise, didn't find that that was a good way to go about this donation.
Okay.
Thank you. A supplemental, yes.
Then what you're saying is if somebody is nice enough to raise the money to buy us a boat, we'd keep it and use it because it would be a better service. Is that not what you're just saying?
Through the chair to the committee, I'm saying that with a big but. And the but is contained in this report. The current lakes as they exist, you really only need 2 boats. That's really, I think, what should be really resonating really strongly to this council is that this fire chief assessed what you currently have for response. And we used a best practice, which is the NFPA guideline 1925 to do that. And we found out that you only need really 1 boat. The second boat is redundant for the first boat, which you do need. So you need at least 2 boats on a lake, and that's all you need right now. Adding a 3rd boat would put this council in a situation that is highlighted in the report of affordability in 10 years.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Nishikawa?
Thank you. To you, is there an option that we don't have to read anything right now? I'm uncomfortable with saying, go ahead and fundraise, do all that. I'm also uncomfortable with saying, I want to do the service level review before we even get into these kind of conversations or decisions of whether we're going to accept anything. I think this is way premature for my comfort level. And I almost don't want to vote on anything. I'm actually a little bit concerned about some of the conversation kind of sounding to me like we're not providing a good service already. And we are. Our fireboats have done a good job. I don't want anybody to think that at least the boat in Torrance hasn't done a good job. Because again, some of the conversations, well, if we get a better one, we can do a better job. I'm just saying we've done a good job. I don't want anybody to think that we're not doing a good job.
Thank you. I'm just going to, I'm going to ask committee if we can take a 5-minute break because I have 3 different resolutions in front of me and I need to get some direction from our deputy clerk as to how to proceed at this point. So if we could just take a 5-minute break, that will take us to 11:30. We will resume here and we will then read a resolution. Thank you. We have a couple of resolutions, and I've been in conversation with our CAO Pink and our clerk to try and create a path forward on this. It's an unusual one, and I think it needs to be understood that we're very grateful when community members come forward, and they've clearly put in quite a bit of time and generously offered a fairly sizable donation, which I think is contributing to our whole trying to understand how this can work. And I think CAO Pink did a wonderful job of explaining, like looking at this holistically in the bigger picture. You know, staff have tried to come up with a resolution that would acknowledge that, perhaps offer an interim or kind of increase, I'd say, in level of service, trying to work with our community to do so. Noting though that we are going through our asset level of service, and in that discussion, we'd be talking about whether or not there is a need for extra boats on the waters. And I think that's to be determined, and it's going to take us a while to get that to that point. In that resolution as well, and I don't want to get hung up on that because we've been focused quite a bit about whether or not we accept this donation. But in that resolution, the last portion of it also talks about the conditions that have been put onto this as well. And I think we probably owe it to Chief Morrell just to walk through some of his thoughts on those conditions. So that is that first resolution. And that was the one I did a quick straw poll on. It's the one that's in our report. And I think staff has tried to create this path forward for us. The other way we could approach this, from what we've been hearing from community, is that we could simply accept the report, accept the proposal, and defer that decision until after the level of service decision. So it's an amended resolution that would simply say, thank you very much for coming forward with the information today. We accept this, and post our level of service, you know, that conversation can either continue or be ongoing. So it's going to be a bit of a delay before that would happen. So before that's kind of the two options I'm putting forward right now. Before I do a straw poll on which one, I think I would like to hear from Chief Morrell on the conditions that, I think there were, how many? Is it 5? The different conditions. So
yeah,
over to you.
Through the chair of the committee, just to be succinct, I'm going to be Chief Ryan here for a minute, and it might be more directive than normal. We'll just talk about the 2 stipulations that were the biggest obstacle for staff to consider. The one stipulation is that there be a 50% rate considered for non-emergency use of the fireboat. And in order for that to meet the requirement for donations, that would need to be open to everyone, which I think the applicant was okay with. The problem that staff have with a 50% reduced rate for non-emergency use of a fireboat is that's not how we currently charge for the use of emergency equipment today. So for example, if we send a fire truck to a wedding to be on standby, it is the same rate that we would pay for an emergency that we're responding to. That's because it's staffed the same way. It is still a fire truck, and it is still able to do its job. The same would apply for a fireboat. In our opinion, it would have to be staffed the same way. It would still have to be ready to go to a fire call, even if it was a non-emergency duty. So therefore, staff did not agree with the idea of a 50% non-emergency rate, which is one of the stipulations that the delegate had wanted. The second stipulation that the delegate had wanted related to use of the fireboat in a control feature in terms of the staff that were allowed to use the fireboat or be on the fireboat. The primary issue for this fire chief was that some of the staff that were being asked to not be on that fireboat are currently firefighters today. They also serve as bylaw and building people, and they may do those roles in other markets. Therefore, they might be coming to our market as firefighters from those other markets. So we weren't quite sure how we would control that. And we saw in staff's view, when we looked at control of a township asset, we believe control of a township asset resides with this body, the committee and council. Control of a staff of an asset for the township should always come through committee and council, delegated authority to the manager in that department. So those were the stipulations that staff viewed were insurmountable. So I just want to make sure that I've got that clearly defined. The other 3 stipulations that were mentioned in the delegate's response were basically things that staff viewed were easily to accustom to, but it's those two stipulations were the biggest stumbling blocks. I stand for questions.
Thank you. And just for my clarity here, that last line of the resolution that's within the report addresses that concern and satisfies it.
Correct. Yes, and
thank
this
you.
committee never got that far because we couldn't get past the
Correct.
donation piece. So
Yes,
I
thank you.
appreciate that, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I do, Mayor Kelly?
Just thank you, and through you, just one quick question. I think it's probably for our CAO. Given that we've just fairly recently completed the fire master plan, how likely is it that the fire work that needs to be done on the level of service will sort of be high on the priority list? And I guess that's a backhanded way of saying, is this really, if we vote to defer until level of service is complete, are we just hunting it 3 miles down the road, or is it something we can accelerate and get done quickly? Because obviously there's a freshness to this offer that we don't want to lose.
CAO Pink?
Thank you, through you. Just hopefully I'm understanding the question, and I think certainly we would look to all the number of master plans that we completed when we go through that level of service study, and ideally you'd abide or adhere generally to those recommendations and findings. However, they don't entirely tie council's hands. Certainly through those policies, they're living documents. You can amend, you can update, and should it be determined through the level of service that the concern about wildland fires, climate change, etc., is significant such that you desire increased fire boats on our lakes or fire apparatus, I think staff can make sure that procedurally we can get there. But that is obviously a bigger, broader discussion that will take part as part of that process.
Okay, so committee, we've all read the actual resolution that is in the report. So that is one I have in front of me. And then the other one is, as I mentioned, that we would be accepting the report, but deferring the conversation or any discussion until after we've completed our service level review. So I'd like to see a show of hands. I'm going to do a straw poll to determine which resolution I should be reading. For the resolution that is in the report, could you please give me a quick thumbs up? Is that the one you would like me to read? 1, 2, 3. Okay. And Rob's on there. Okay. And I don't see Councillor Roberts anymore. So we're under, so we have now 9 of us, right? Okay. Okay. So I will read this resolution then that is before me. Moved by Councillor McIntyre, not your fault. Seconded by Councillor Zavitz. Whereas a community group has approached the township with a proposal to raise funds for the purchase of a municipal fireboat on Lake Muskoka, the receipt of which is proposed to be subject to 5 conditions. Be it resolved that committee recommend to council that the township accept the community donation of a fireboat for Lake Muskoka and the issuance of charitable tax receipts to eligible donors subject to the following. That at which time the oldest existing fireboat on Lake Muskoka has reached the end of its useful life, that it would not be replaced so as to have the effect of maintaining only 2 fireboats on Lake Muskoka, unless council agrees to fire service level enhancements through the asset management levels of service study. And that committee recommend to council that the township not provide confirmation of any stipulated conditions on the specifications, location, or restrictions related to the operation of the fireboat. And we've had a very lengthy conversation on this. I'm going to ask one last time, is there any further comment? Councillor Bosemore.
Yes, just clarification on the discussion about not being able to use the stipulation that we couldn't use bylaw officers if they were firefighters fighting a fire. I do not understand what Miss Chief Morel's concern is. I think what the Mr. McNair is suggesting is that we don't want the fireboat being used for other types of services like, property inspections. But I think I heard Chief Morel say, but that would mean I couldn't have building inspectors who are also volunteer firefighters on the boat because they're building inspectors. Did I interpret that correctly?
Okay, Chief Morrell?
Through you, Chair, to committee, yes, you did. And in fact, there is a case in point where we do have to put building people on a fireboat to go out to islands when we have to identify that a building is inhabitable. Under the Building Code Act, they would perform that duty on our behalf. So having an asset and then having control within that asset becomes very hard and challenging to manage. That is why staff recommended not having that stipulation.
Thank you. Okay, I have read. I will now call the question. All those in favor? Okay, that carries. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. McNair. I know this has been a long journey. And no, I apologize. We are going to move on now. I know there's been, nothing. Thank you. I'm moving on now in the agenda. Pardon me?
Send an email.
You can send an email to the group afterwards and we can make sure that that gets sent out. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Thank you. I'm now going to move on to 11C. I think that is from our, oh, Mr. Holland, how are you? Been sitting there patiently waiting. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair. And the report before you bylaw -129, and some of those amendments include the removal of an administrative burden that
We need a microphone.
Thank you.
Good.
Yes.
Sorry. The report before you would look to amend the current fire road bylaw 2022-129, and some of the amendments include the removal of an administrative burden that would have the township enter into agreements with private property owners for enforcement of the fire road, the introduction of an administrative monetary penalty section, the inclusion of several new fire routes in Section C, and lastly, remove the appendices in Schedule C as they impose a considerable administrative inefficiencies as properties may undergo redevelopment. And now I stand before you for any questions.
Okay, committee, do we have any questions? Very good report. Oh,
I do have one thing
you
to
have a
add, though.
question. You have a question. Okay.
No question, just a comment. A couple of councillors had brought it to my attention that there is a grammatical error that will be corrected in the next reiteration of the bylaw.
Thank you. Seeing no questions, I will read the resolution. Moved by, there is a question. Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you. Through you, just in light of our previous discussions. So a fire access route is decided to be private street, public street, access route, or right away. Do we actually go to the extent of knowing if the truck will fit on the road and into the, is that part of this? Or is this just how do I say access, parking, et cetera? I mean, can our big fire trucks get everywhere in our township? Because I guess that's a statement earlier, they can't.
Okay, so who would like to take that? Chief Morrell.
Yeah, I'll take this one because it's a relatively easy one. We do not know if we can fit down every access and driveway. However, we do know when people are provided access route or access permits, they are provided a sheet that stipulates the width of the driveway and how they are supposed to maintain it. So that is when that communication takes place. But that is a project that we are working towards, is to look at every driveway and make the owners of the property aware of whether or not our fire trucks can access the property. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Any other questions? I will read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Kent. Be it resolved that the amendments to Fire Route Bylaw 2022-129 attached as Appendix 1 to Staff Report ES-2024-014 be approved by committee, and that amending Bylaw 2024-109 be forwarded to Council for final approval. Any comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. That is carried. We are now going to move on to item 12A. This is on the Muskoka Lakes Community Fund report. Just give Councillor Nishikawa a moment. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Welcome, Mr. Cox.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of committee. So my report this morning regards the proposal that was received from the Muskoka Community Foundation for the creation of a Muskoka Lakes Community Fund. As committee will recall, the MCF presented this proposal at the September meeting of this committee. Staff have reviewed the proposal as directed by council, and our findings are included in the report. The recommendation of the report is that the township should proceed to partner with the MCF for the creation of a Muskoka Lakes Community Fund, and further that it is also proposed that this fund would replace the existing community grant program. It's the opinion of staff upon our review that the model proposed by the MCF in a partnership with an organization that has expertise in philanthropy and community giving and the provision of community grants would allow the funding that the township devotes towards these sorts of causes to be more impactful, to be more focused. And also it would all open up opportunities for the MCF to leverage potential funding from additional donations or private funders to enhance the fund for a greater impact. Alternatives including the continuation of the status quo or a potential hybrid model are also included in the report for committee's consideration. And that concludes my summary of the report, but I would be happy to answer any questions that committee may have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you to James. So I've been all over this. It seems like it's a howitzer response to a pea shooter problem. I mean, I don't understand why, as I understand it, the $25,000 grant program. I mean, are we talking, I guess part A are we talking more than that? I mean, are you talking about taking the CIP monies and all of a sudden it's a $200,000 tranche that the fund would, foundation would on our behalf? Or is this really $25,000 less the service fees? So we've taken our 25 and made it 23.1 is my question, A. And I would ask you that.
Through you, Madam Chair. The second one of your statements would be the correct one, that we are only proposing that the $25,000 that is devoted to community grants be directed to the creation of this new fund. Now, the difference that the MCF's proposal would allow is that there is a provision that the MCF could leverage additional funds outside of the township's contribution to grow the fund.
If I might, Secretary, thank you very much for that. Leads right into my second question, which is, I'd like to know what that money is. I mean, if this proposal came forward and it was the MCF, as we're now calling it, would donate 25,000 or matching the township's 25,000, then I think there's some meat there. There's something that I can get into. Otherwise, I don't understand why we would $25,000 and we gave it away last spring in one sitting, one vote. That's it. I don't know why we're overthinking, unless I'm really missing something. So, I mean, this isn't hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's giving the $25,000 worth of a grant program, taking it away from the company and giving it to an outside party to distribute that we're going to pay a fee for. And I don't think that the return on 25K at TD Bank anywhere near what the fee is to administer. So I wouldn't be in support of this, and I must be missing something. So to that end, can you explain that aspect of it?
Through you, Madam Chair. So again, I think that the main advantage to the municipality is that by working with an organization that has experience in running these sorts of grant programs and that has the ability to work with other donors within the community, people who are looking to leave a legacy to Muskoka, looking to make a donation as part of their regular philanthropy, would allow that there to be additional monies that come into this fund beyond just the contribution of the township.
So if I just before I do want to allow for some other questions because we will get to the conversation or the discussion point, but I think for clarity's sake, the $25,000 that we currently have earmarked for community grants, there's a different opportunity being presented to us to help manage and administer that with parameters that staff would work with the organization to determine that this body would then feel comfortable with. The benefits, I think I've heard, are not only would it allow us to possibly, or us, our community, it would possibly open up another revenue stream for other interested parties who may be wanting to add into our community. This would give a vehicle to do so. That's outside of our control, but that body would be able to do so. And then the other thing I believe has been noted is the reduced administrative load on our current staff. So there was two benefits I think that staff had noted about perhaps exploring this other model. That said, I think in your report, you have provided alternative number 2, which is perhaps there's a hybrid approach to this. Is that correct?
Yes, Madam Chair, that is correct. So for the alternative, the hybrid approach, the township could approach the Muskoka Community Foundation for discussions about creating a Muskoka Community Fund, but still maintain most likely a smaller amount that could be used for community grants to perhaps groups that would not be eligible to work with the foundation or other smaller events that are sort of outside the parameters of the future community fund.
Okay, thank you. So I see 3 hands up. I saw Mayor Kelly first, then Councillor Kent, and then Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. And through you.
We're at questions. I have not read the resolution yet.
That's fair. I just have questions. Thank you. And through you, is there room for even a different hybrid version? In other words, while I like the depoliticization of the process, is it possible there'll be an investment or a disbursement committee? Is it possible we would have the opportunity to have a rep or two participate with this group in making those determinations of what gets granted?
Through you, Madam Chair, if we that was certainly staff's understanding of how the process would work. If we look at the example of the fund that was recently created in Lake of Bays through a very similar process, there is representation on the committee that makes those decisions from municipal council.
Okay.
As a quick follow-up, there is an eligibility issue that troubles me in terms of who can be a recipient.
Sorry, committee, Mayor Kelly is asking a question. Thank you.
There's an eligibility issue, and I'm curious to know whether, if we look back a year or two at the grants that we've made, how many of those grants would have been deemed ineligible because of the corporate status or lack thereof, or other reasons that might have discriminated against people we've already made grants to.
Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. So, of course, we are not fully aware of the exact corporate status of all the applicants that we receive. Taking a look through the 13 grants that we awarded earlier this year, my hypothesis, my understanding would be there would be 9 of them that would still be eligible and 4 of them that would not be. However, again, without knowing the particulars of how they're organized, I wouldn't be able to say for sure.
Thank you. Can't remember Councillor Kent and then Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, through you. My question would be, it strikes me as there's not a huge amount, there is expertise that they have that we don't have. But I would like to see, if we're going to contribute $25,000, I'd like to see them contribute $25,000 to see, they're going to bring the expertise, they're going to charge us 2.5%. There's got to be a reason for giving it to someone else to do. It's not a huge amount of time since we have so many requests and so little money. on our staff time? I mean, I wouldn't mind hearing how much there is, but is that something we could go back to them with where, well, we're here, you can have our 25, but we need you to bring in 25 and make it a larger fund. And they've talked about it, but I would like to see it be a commitment prior to us entering into this.
Okay, Mr. Cox?
Through you, Madam Chair. So my understanding is that is not the foundation's operational model. They work with donors who wish to establish a fund or to provide to donate to an existing fund. And they would have the ability to, if we were to create a community fund, they would have the ability to encourage people to donate to that. But my understanding is that the organization itself administers these funds, but does not directly contribute funding to it.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards?
Yes. The problem I see with this is we would say 4 out of the 14 of ours wouldn't be eligible because they're not registered and incorporated, so we can't help them. I'm looking at their thing to do, the food bank, they do Andy's House, which is great and everything, but how do, like, that's almost a separate thing from what we're doing. How do we guarantee that the 4 people that are asking for it are looked after? Thank you.
Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. I think that's a very good point that you raise. And one thing that I will say is that over the past several years of the community grant program, we have seen more and more applications from charities, from nonprofit organizations, from larger organizations that provide very good and very, very positive activities and benefits to our community. And fewer, I think, from the sort of smaller scale community groups that are, looking to hold an event in a village or something like that over the years. And so I think that there may be some value again in committee considering some sort of hybrid model where we could retain a smaller amount to support community groups that may not necessarily be organized or incorporated in a way that would make them eligible for a larger amount of funding from the community foundation, and then establishing a separate, more dedicated stream through the fund that way. But that would be a decision, of course, for committee to make.
Okay, Councillor Bosemuth and then Councillor Zavitz. Did you have your hand up, Councillor Bosemuth?
I did, but my questions have been answered. It was along the lines of, what happens to those 3 or 4 entities, right, and the sense that we do lose some degree of control about where the ultimately the money goes to. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Zavitz?
Thank you, and through you to James. So I view the 25,000 as pure and simple economic development. That is your role within the township. And I just heard you say at the very end of your words that not to put words in your mouth, but the hybrid piece or some derivative thereof of the resolution is your recommendation, or should I? Well, I don't want words in your mouth. So if you would elaborate.
Okay, Mr. Cox?
Through you, Madam Chair. So my recommendation is the recommendation that is laid out in the report. However, I will say that the alternatives that are included in the report are also equally legitimate methods for distributing support for community groups. The existing community grants program has worked well over the past number of years that it has been in operation. It supported a lot of good causes within the community, and certainly if committee opted not to pursue this partnership with the Muskoka Community Foundation, we would still continue to administer that program and support groups within our community.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I'm hearing from around the table an interest in the option number 2 or alternative number 2, the hybrid approach. So committee, if you could just give me a couple minutes with our clerk and CAO, I think I will see if there's an opportunity to amend the resolution to perhaps reflect that, and then I could read that. Committee, I just want to do a quick straw poll. We do have an amended resolution in front of us. That if we would like to explore or have staff explore and, perhaps a rescoped community grants program here and come back also with the potential for this community fund. Staff have actually reworded and amended our existing resolution. So just a straw poll. Are we interested? I'll call it the second option in a hybrid approach coming back from staff. Can you just give me a quick thumbs up, because then I will read the amended resolution. Okay, so where you're not interested in the hybrid approach? You would like me to read? Okay, then I'll go back. Would a committee like me to read the original resolution as it's stated in the report, which be that would have the community fund replace the township's existing community grants? You would like me to read that one? Okay, straw poll. Those in favor of like reading that first, the existing one in the report? I see 2. I will ask again. For those that haven't put your hand up, there's an amended resolution that would give staff the direction to explore a rescoped community fund, a grant program that we have, as well as the community fund. So there would be the 2 streams, and they would come back to us with a report. Would you be interested in that rescoped one, the second amended version? Okay, hands up. Oh, Councillor Edwards, you have a comment?
Yeah, but my comment is if you're not supporting either one of them, you wouldn't put your hand up for either one of them. Is that right?
This is a good comment.
Thank you.
Okay.
Because that's.
I'm just trying to get a sense as to which resolution to read, though, because obviously how you vote on either of them. So did you have a third option?
Turn it down.
Okay, so, okay, Rob, Councillor Bosworth?
Yeah, I would actually just go for the original one, because I'm rather aligning with Councillor Zavitz, where I think I would just vote against it.
Okay, so before we get into I will then do a quick straw poll. Those that would like me to read the resolution as it's written in the report. Straw hands up for those interested. Okay, so that is what I will do. Moved.
If I might, I would ask for a recorded vote. Thank you.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Zavitz, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that staff be directed to work with the Muskoka Community Foundation to develop a Muskoka Lakes Community Fund to replace the township's existing community grants program. And further, that staff be directed to bring the final terms of the Muskoka Lakes Community Fund back to committee for review and approval at a future date. So Councillor Zavitz has asked for a recorded vote. So give that to you. Thank you.
Please indicate yay or nay after I say your name. Councillor Bosworth.
Nay.
Thank you. Councillor Burry.
Registered abstention.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards.
Nay.
Councillor Kent.
Sorry, can you please put on your microphone, please?
Nay.
Thank you. Councillor Mazan.
Yay.
Councillor McIntyre.
Yay.
Sorry, yay?
Yay.
Thank you. Councillor Nishikawa has declared a pecuniary interest. Councillor Roberts is not in the meeting any longer. He's absent. Councillor Zavitz.
Nay.
And Mayor Kelly?
Yay.
Okay. So the yeas total 4, excuse me, the nays total 4 and the yeas total 3.
Okay, so that is defeated.
That's defeated.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on now to, okay, I've got 3 of these. Ms. Story.
Oh, she's not here. I'm doing it.
Reading it?
Okay, mind if I do it from here? Do you want me to- Thank you, Chair Mazan. I'm here in the absence of Chriselle Story. Or who just left? Oh, she. Okay, thank you. The report before you is regarding a license agreement application that was received from the owner of 1560 Foreman Road in order to recognize and permit the continued use of an existing driveway located on a township-owned original road allowance. Staff have reviewed the application and are recommending approval, subject to the conditions noted in the staff report. And with that said, I will turn it back to the chair.
Thank you. Committee, are there any questions? I'm seeing none. I will read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor McIntyre. Be it resolved that license agreement application LA-02-24 10000062126 Ontario Inc. be approved subject to the following conditions. 1. That a draft numbered reference plan of survey be prepared and provided to the clerk for review within a 1 year of the day of this conditional approval. That the township be in receipt of the following from the acting solicitor. Confirmation from a title search that the applicant is the owner of abutting land and that the encroachments are located on township land. And 2, a draft license agreement to the satisfaction of the township. 3, that the applicant receive approval from the district municipality of Muskoka that the entrance way and location of the driveway is satisfactory, if applicable. 4, that the applicant provides proof of liability insurance covering the encroachment in a minimum amount of $2 million with the township named as an additional insured. 5, payment of any applicable fees related to the preparation of the license agreement, including but not limited to the solicitor's time and disbursements, as well as confirmation applicable property taxes have been paid up to date.
Can I just confirm that Councillor Nishikawa is aware of the matter? Like, is somebody gone out to mention to Councillor Nishikawa that? Did she did come back? Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't see it because I was doing this, so I'm sorry. I have too many.
I think she did come back, but. Okay, thank you. I've read the resolution. Are there any comments? All those in favor? That carries. Thank you. We are now moving on to new business, and I note that under 15A, there's a discussion on the VORs, and I believe Councillor Boseworth that this was something that you wanted to have a conversation about.
Yes, thank you. 2 points I'd like to make under the VOR. One is that the Transport Canada has been opened up discussion and will soon be finalizing a position on modernization of the VOR. For those who don't recall, VOR stands for Vessel Operation Restriction Regulation. We have a few of them in our lake. One of them is the things that the VOR can control are whether or not you're allowed boats on a waterway or not, whether you can allow electric only or 10 horsepower boats. And you can also put speed limits. So the R9, 9 kilometers within 30 meters is a VOR. And we also have VORs restricting tow sport operations. We have both the Indian River and the Joe River have restrictions where no tow sports are allowed. They have recently separated out wake surfing from tow sports, so you can have, you can regulate wake surfing independent of other tow sports. The modernization is essentially a process where they are moving the 7 or 8 attachments to the regulation. They're moving it into some other regulate or other document in the government, so that when a municipality applies for a VOR, the Transport Canada does not need an order in council, which I think essentially means they don't have to go to Parliament. And this will speed up the process by 1.5 years. Currently, it takes about 4 years, and they hope to drop to about 1.5 years to 2 years. And essentially, what they're saying is, if you make an application for a VOR in the summer of year 1, you will have it in place in time for summer of year 2. So this is a big advantage for townships to be able to, be more reactive to their needs of the community. So they have asked for comments. They're in what's called Gazette 1, which is essentially where they have published their proposed regulation, and it is the final chance to comment. I'm not suggesting that our township needs to send in a letter of support. I think it's obvious that if the government is doing things faster on their side, it's better for us in general in case we ever wanted to apply for. That said, they have done nothing on the requirements that are required from a township to make an application for a VOR. And they are quite extensive and put a fair amount of load onto the township and the community to do that. But they're generally well-founded. So that's the one side of the awareness. And one of the reasons I wanted to make this point to council was that there was a growing concern across North America of the environmental, property damage, and personal safety issues surrounding wake surfing. And so there are some very significant movements taking place. And I would not be surprised if one day this council will be asked to consider or be part of a VOR with somewhere within the Muskoka Lakes. So those are the 2 points. We need to be aware that certainly you all know I'm on the board of Safe Quiet Lakes, and we are actively working with organizations actually across North America to get some science behind what is the appropriate place for wake surfing. So that's the end of my report.
Well, thank you. Mayor Kelly?
Thank you, and through you, good report, Councillor Bosenworth. One quick question, I may have missed it. Are these things still enacted by regulatory sort of exercise, or do they actually have to go for an act of parliament in order to become effective?
The modernization will allow I think it's caused by, so there's a term, I can't quite think of it, but it's sort of like we're going to have the trail pass or the trail map be embedded it's embedded by definition. So these will be regulations that can be decided by staff rather than having to go through government. And that speeds up the process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's included by reference. So rather than being explicit part of the regulation references a list of VORs, and that's what the transport staff will be able to keep current.
Thank you. Moving out on to the district updates versus our new processes. If anybody has questions for our district councilors, Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you, I guess to the mayor who sits on the Public Works, Engineering and Public Works Committee at the district, unless another member does that around our table. I do have a question, and it's an interesting one. Yesterday, I witnessed compost containers, brand new green compost containers being delivered on the Moon River Access Road, Sandor Drive, which, as I'm aware, is outside of the OALA confine, and it's the last road on Highway 38 before the reserve. Does that mean that everyone is getting a green compost bin? Because I'm getting that question like crazy.
Thank you. Mayor Kelly?
Thank you. My understanding is that they were supposed to be targeted at people living within the urban centers. There's anything, you know, deemed to be part of the urban center, and not on obviously seasonal roads because of the issue with people leaving on Sunday and having bags of that stuff lying around. There were some misses. There were some misses where the things weren't dropped. And I understand this morning there may have been several that were delivered to places that really shouldn't have received them. So they're going to sort that out.
A quick supplemental on that, because I'm glad that you brought that up, Councillor Zavitz. I know within our area, what I would think would have been a seasonal road also received them. And so now there's a bit of confusion out in the community. So what is the best way for us as this council to help direct?
There is a 1-800 complaints line for solid waste at the district. And I know that we've been sharing that number. I can circulate it to everybody on council.
Thank you.
This afternoon.
Chair, if I might.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Thank you, and through you. So the concern I would have is certainly, while I didn't witness it, our waste area happens to be servicing 21 properties. So, you know, if all of a sudden there's 21 green containers, because there would be, people seem to share the blue ones, but the green ones would be ridiculous. You know, in those places where, great that it's one at a property at the end of your driveway, but when they're in aggregate at a particular location geographically.
Right.
Bizarre. And so I just wonder, I guess to you, sir, has that been contemplated at the district engineering?
It's not been discussed specifically. I'm not sure I understood your point. There were 21 bins dropped for 21.
Well, there actually wasn't, but had it been a designated location, and I'm not sure the distance from Bala Center to Sandor Drive versus the distance from the Bala Center to my home. You know, who decides that? Part of the question. The other part of it is when it's deemed this area gets composting, wow, there must be some sort of a bigger unit for 5 cottage. I mean, otherwise this is gonna look crazy in Muskoka.
Perhaps
I'm not sure.
understanding the green bin rollout, I think would be really helpful for
That's right.
those of us who are, because whether it's or if it's designated towards urban centers, which it might be, the confusion that's now out there is that there's areas that would be outside what I would call our normal urban centers that have received green bins in sporadically. So there's almost two, understanding it and then the complaint process.
Yeah, I can circulate the complaint process. I can figure out the intended target as well.
Okay, CAO Pink?
Yeah, sorry, I think just suggested, I think staff can commit, Director Colucci can investigate with the district and perhaps we can forward to council after the meeting, just an update on the green bin rollout. So all committees clear on the facts.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards.
I believe I seen an email to a resident from James Steele that basically said the rural are getting it too. And
So I
okay,
think
was that answer
staff,
to a resident.
What I'm hearing from staff is they're going to do a bit of research for us. Thank you. And we'll follow up because clearly there's some confusion. Thank you. Any other comments or questions for our district councillors? Okay. Seeing none. I think I have one resolution to read. Moved by Councillor McIntyre, seconded by Councillor Burry. Be it resolved that this meeting adjourn at 12:25 by my clock p.m. and the next regular meeting of the General Finance Committee will be held on Wednesday, November the 13th at 9 a.m. or at the call of the chair electronically from the Council Chambers Municipal Office in Port Carling, Ontario. Just before I call the question, I have two comments. First, we do have an upcoming budget meeting, special general finance budget meeting, which I believe is on October the 22nd at 9 AM. Is that correct? So for anybody who is listening, just to be, it could be, it could be 10 AM.
Beat you to it, 10 a.m.
At 10 AM on October the 22nd. So that is an additional meeting. And the only other piece right before I call this question is Mayor Kelly, what time would you like us to be back around this table for the beginning of council?
We think 1:30 will be good. Thanks.
Okay, so 1:30 we will resume. We'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Have a wonderful lunch and we will see everyone back at 1:30.